being human, so peculiar, we're too scared to make a change. Shock. Human, so peculiar, we're too scared to make a change. Shakara, ha, Shakara, ha, Shakara, ha, Shakara, ha, Shakara.
And we are live once again from the Tulpa manifesting facility aboard aircraft Air Force 2. This is Library of Mass Destruction. I'm your host, Capitalisimo, and with me, as always, is Christopher Sandbatch. How are you doing today, sir?
Why did we get downgraded to Air Force 2?
It has the better Tulpa manifestation facility.
Okay, so it's a hardware issue.
Trump doesn't have any. Trump doesn't have any that are not just himself, but JD Vance has fat JD Vance. JD Vance can do things that JD Vance can't.
Are these bots that we've picked up here that are giving us a screeching moo dang jukebox wizard?
Jukebox wizard has given us a screeching moo dang every week for the past 6 weeks. Yes.
Oh.
Yep, that's right. For whatever reason, Kick has the finest chat interface of all of the many platforms that we stream on. So,
yeah. So I spent last night watching interviews with Ted Bundy, and I decided that I'm remarkably like him.
Really? How? What's your count?
0.
You're the bizarro Ted Bundy, where you just keep getting spiritually murdered by women rather than physically personally murdering women.
It's a very complimentary setup, actually.
It is. If you had ever met him and shaken hands, you would have come together to form just a person who was very well balanced and charismatic.
My MKUltra handler once told me that I'm a beacon to narcissistic women because I display characteristics that are the sort of converse, the sort of codependent, like needy, dude, and that this is like chumming the water for them, and that's why they flood my shit.
They can smell it, and they're like this one is prey.
Yeah.
It's not. I guess I can see it. You're an artistic, gentle soul who nonetheless has an interest in masculine pursuits, like history, of course.
Yeah.
You signal left while also signaling right.
Do I do that? Do I signal left?
As long as you don't talk.
What do you mean?
Your appearance.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, you look like a you look like a leftist.
What does that even mean?
Everybody knows exactly what that means. You look like a guy who would, probably be a leftist. I tried to signal left as well. So
well, you wear suits that fit, unfortunately. So I think the only way to signal you wear the way to signal right is you got to get that like weird blue nylon suit, and you got to wear brown shoes that don't complement it, and I think it's the right wing look these days.
it is, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe the right is adopting
I
Sandbatch.
quite literally have the blue suit test, where like if a public figure, when did I say that I was a leftist? I've never been a leftist in my life. Like I have never, like I don't even have a red pill story.
I don't think you said you were a leftist.
Like I don't even have a red pill story like some of y'all do. Like I don't like I've just
No. I see. You're talking. You're talking to sex freak
is trying to DDD me.
I mean, you are a great target for it, but Sex Freakman actually he's not he has never said he was a leftist. He said he's not a conservative.
Yeah.
He's
I'm
not a conservative. Do not get those confused. I am also not have never been a conservative.
It's great, by the way, to see Gabe back in the chat. The right wing is being surrounded by an ambiguous mix of Browns and Arabs in Miami clubs, he says.
Wow. I mean,
thanks for that, Gabe. Next time,
of course, the right wing. The right wing in a Miami club is, of course, entirely Cuban. So
no. There's
the Cubans are being surrounded by Arabs. Yeah,
either Cubans or gays. Take your shot.
Yeah. Randall Shirker right out of the gate with a $10 review super chat. Currently seething as journalists complaining caused DeepSeek to tighten censorship on their API back in December. You don't hate journos enough. It's never enough. Also, hope you guys are cozy.
I don't even know how this happened. Hold on, I gotta check something right outside. That's got to be a bot right there. Capitalisimo.
Oh, see, that one is a bot. Yeah,
okay,
that's a bot.
I'll be right back.
Okay, all right. He's going to go check his DeepSeek instance to see if it can no longer generate nudie pics of the women he dreams of. Let's see. A follow-up from Shirker. This is infuriating mostly because DeepSeek is really cheap to run through their official API compared to going to OpenRouter and using a different AI model provider. Still cheaper than Grok, though. Interesting.
Wait, what? I was over the bar. It said it's a logo dataless. I hate that book. I fucking hate that book. I hate it so much. It's not a good book. I see people on the internet all the time trying to tell me that like Ulysses was a good book. It's not a good book. Not.
James Joyce's Ulysses is not a good book.
It's not good. It's not good. It's never been good. People who think it's good, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's not an enjoyable reader experience.
I'm trying to catch up with chat. For some reason, our chat had like not shown up. Like there was a backlog, and then it all came all at once. Really backed up, guys. Wait, so what is the blue suit test?
The blue suit test is that it's that if someone has ever appeared in public wearing the that's kind of, it's like not quite navy blue. It's Dubliners is good, Gabe. Yeah, sorry. The Dubliners is an excellent. It's been Ivy Day in the committee room. It's a great story. But there's a particular uniform that all of the Republican operatives wear now. Sandbatch isn't high IQ enough to get it. Actually, I'm high IQ enough to jump over the getting it tranche and re-discard it as nonsense is what it is. So like I'm filtering you, filtering me is the way this works. But the blue suit test is that if anyone has ever appeared in public in the like sort of lighter than navy blue suit with silly socks and brown shoes that don't complement the outfit in total, which seems to be the Republican operative uniform of choice in the era of Trump 2.0.
So that one is that. So that guy is an operative. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it means he's like, it's like the Project 2025 uniform.
Got it. All right. man, I just bought that blue suit.
Did you?
I gotta get rid of it. I gotta get rid of it. I only wear shoes that complement what I'm wearing though.
Let me see if I can find an example. I mean, you know what it is.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. It's like a dark cerulean. It's a very strong blue. I know what you mean. Yeah, I mean it's the one that Vivek Ramaswamy always wears.
Yes. Look, here's a great example. Oh my God, what a beautiful. How do I do this? How do I stream?
You can present. You can hit the present button.
How do I do that though?
Lower band of the screen.
Just
put it in the private chat and I'll share it.
No, I got this. I'll figure it out. It out. Share
Great.
screen.
I love
these tips again.
Yeah, never show them tips.
Never show them. There it is, right there.
All right, it's not there.
Oh my God,
this is peak content. I love it.
Yeah, I give up. How do I get out of this? There.
You got to send it to the private chat. Anyway, yes, it is the perfect blue. Vivek, blue suit. All right. Images.
I can't upload pictures in the private chat.
All right. Here we go.
I quit.
Open image in new tab. There we go. Share this tab instead. This blue is what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's it.
There we go. That one.
Don't wear that
brown
suit.
And he's wearing no shoes because he has brown feet. And that does not complement the outfit. Because he will never look good.
It's hideous.
And by it you mean Vivek Ramaswamy.
There's like nothing about that picture. There's nothing about that picture that's good.
That's right.
I'm gonna share the stream.
All right.
Now, like whenever I pulled the stream, whenever I pulled our DMs back up, the picture of Ted Bundy landed on me, and I immediately thought, "Wow, what a good-looking guy."
Ted Bundy is a great looking gentleman. He really is.
Are we gonna talk about?
We are gonna talk about Ted Bundy today. We're gonna talk about Ted Bundy, and we're gonna talk about here. This is the image of Ted Bundy that you are talking about. Oh wow, that's it's quite zoomed in. There we go. This is the image of Ted Bundy you're thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, look at the outfit. Look at the cuffs. Look the way the blazer sits on him. It's perfect. This is a man who knew how to dress himself.
He was well put together. That's why he got so many love letters in prison. Now, of course,
you know, he's more or less the only serial killer for whom that's been true.
Well, that's not true at all. Because look, so here, of course, here's Ted Bundy.
That's
right. Ted Bundy on the left. That's definitely Ted Bundy.
No, that's Smith, dude.
Ted Bundy. Noted author Ted Bundy. And then in the middle is Ken Bianchi, the Hillside Strangler, handsome man. And then there is of John Wayne Gacy, who is Hello HR. Not looking good.
The serial killer that never gets talked about is the one that I find the most like both disturbing and fascinating.
Who?
I can't remember his name, but he's called the Candyman.
Oh, the Candyman. That's a good one. I'm not familiar with the Candy. I've heard that before, but I don't know who he is.
See, he's kind of the first one.
Not you don't mean
Dean Coral.
Okay. You don't mean Ed Gein. Yeah.
No, Dean Coral. I mean, his crime spree is a little earlier than most of the serial killers. So when does this normally happen? I guess I don't know. That's not necessarily true because there's some that were before him, but he's the most terrifying, he's the most terrifying story of all of them.
Who is?
Dean Coral.
Oh,
and if you look at pictures of him, all pictures of him are genuinely terrifying. Like not like Ted Bundy. There's no charming pictures of Dean Coral.
I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. here's a charming image of him. That's a good looking fella.
Yeah.
It's not so bad. It's not so bad. What's so awful about Dean Coral? Here's why was he called the Candyman? Why was he called the Candyman?
I think it's because he owned a candy store.
Oh, this. There he is. There's his fucking murder bag. There's his magic murder bag.
His murder bag.
And let's see. There's got to be some other ones. What did he like? Make people take photos and then kill them?
No, he would like insert a glass rod in their dick and hammer it, and then keep them alive for days, and have his two like drug-addled underlings repeatedly sodomize them. He was like really.
Oh, so it was what do you call it? It was Zed from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, that's me. A lot of shit's based on him. Yeah.
Interesting. Let's see then. I mean, hey, you know what? It's a strong method. It's a strong method. I appreciate the method. I can't say that there are people that I wouldn't think deserve a glass rod inserted in their urethra and then crushed with hammers. But I wouldn't do it just for fun. I wouldn't do it just for fun.
Hammers?
What?
Crushed with hammers?
Well, yeah. How else are you going to break the metal, the glass rod?
Fair enough.
Yeah. You don't want it coming out. You don't want it coming out there again. This is an interesting one. Chud Cloner says Flesh Simulator has a decent video linking the Candyman to Gacy through pedo mailing lists.
Yeah, no, that's
wild.
I've heard that one before as well.
Wild.
I think it's probably true. I mean, like Gacy, and I think Gacy, I think named Dean Coral as an influence.
I was just like, so whose work was influential? Well, when I was growing up, I really loved Dean Coral. Yeah, that's right.
We don't have serial killers anymore because we now have online lit.
That's right. That's what's keeping Cairo Smith from becoming Ted Bundy.
Yep. Alt literature goes away, and everybody goes from naming Mark Strand as an influence to naming the Candyman as an influence, and you get a totally different outcome.
That's right. Well, so last week we ended on a mention of Jolly West, just right at the end. David McGowan only gives him short billing, sadly, only one paragraph on the man himself. But alas, not every book needs to be about Jolly on West. Speaking of last night, I regaled my wife with the story of Tusco, and she cried for Judy, and that's
really?
Why she's a wonderful woman.
Yeah.
Yep.
Most of the women that I tell about Judy call me a narcissist.
Really? That's horrifying. How could they not empathize with the elephant? She adopted baby elephants, but she never went with another man because of the experience, she watched Tusco die and couldn't help him.
Never experienced a woman who's like blames you for telling her a sad thing.
No.
Well, that's the theme in my life.
Wow. I sometimes think that Judy must have always thought that just around a corner somewhere would be Jolly West with a massive syringe, like a comically large one. But anyway, so we'll get going. We're going to finish the story of Ken Bianchi, and then we'll get into, I think it's Bundy and then Gacy. And that's like 30 pages of this book, so I'm pretty sure we're not getting past that. So, 3 months after the last killing, and remember, Ken Bianchi was the Hillside Strangler, a Hillside Strangler. After the last killing, Bianchi left the Los Angeles area for Bellingham, Washington, where he wasted no time in joining the Whatcom County Sheriff's Reserves. Strangely enough, the chief of the police department of Bianchi's new city of residence was both a former Los Angeles cop and friend of 14-year-old victim Sonia Johnson's father, the bookkeeper for an LA area Catholic parish school. Chief Terry Mangan had an unusual history that sounded as though it could have been written by a Hollywood screenwriter. While working as an ordained priest and as a high school teacher and dean of students in Monterey, California, he began serving as a counselor to the police. He was soon regularly hanging out at the police academy and riding on patrol every night, becoming some kind of mythical priest cop. He ultimately left the priesthood altogether and became a full-fledged cop. In 1976, the year before the stranglings began, he was named the new chief of the Bellingham Force. That is wild. That's kind of awesome. Mythical priest cop. Yeah.
I know a lot of people who've lived in Bellingham, and they all have similar stories.
Really? All of them left the priesthood and became police?
One of them did. Yeah, one of them did.
Did you know this guy?
No, I don't think so.
Well, it's weird that it happened twice. On January 12th, 1979, 2 Western Washington University co-eds were found bound and strangled. Footprints and a loose pubic hair were reportedly recovered at the scene. Couldn't have been me. New Bellingham resident Ken Bianchi was arrested shortly after the discovery of the bodies, and he promptly confessed. He was appointed Dean Brett as his defense counsel, and a psychiatric social worker named John Johnson, that guy's from Wisconsin, was assigned to the case as well. Bianchi was held in isolation and allowed only limited visitation with family and friends. Before long, he was examined by a stream of psychiatrists and psychologists, some of whom had known and long-standing connections to the CIA. Not naming names, I guess. Not naming names here. The first to examine Bianchi on the spring equinox. Oh, I guess we are naming names. On the spring equinox was Dr. John Watkins, who questioned the accused in the presence of Brett Johnson, Frank Salerno, and Salerno's partner, both of whom had flown up from Los Angeles. Next was Dr. Ron Markman of Los Angeles, a man with the dubious distinction of being both a psychiatrist and an attorney. Amazing. He had previously been involved in both the Manson and the SLA Patty Hearst cases, which, of course, Jolly West was also involved in the Symbian. Yeah, also involved. Footnote on Patty Hearst. Contrary to conventional wisdom, the so-called Symbionese Liberation Army appears to have been an artificial creation of the CIA. Its architect was a man named Colton Westbrook, who had previously served in Vietnam as a Phoenix program operative. The supposed revolutionary group arose from an MKUltra project run by Westbrook at, appropriately enough, California's Cowtown facility. Did
you just change Vacaville to Cowtown?
I've been changing Vacaville to Cowtown the entire time.
That's a nice touch.
Yeah. I mean, tell me I'm wrong. It's the same thing. The stench surrounding the Strangler case reached a new level with the arrival of the next examiner, none other than Dr. Donald Lund, last seen playing a pivotal role in the Fraser, Kemper, and Mullen cases. Conveniently enough, Lund just happened to have family in Bellingham that he purportedly just happened to be visiting at the time. So
Bellingham is one of these. It's one of these places that just Twin Peaks style stuff happens in Bellingham.
There are portals, right? Let's see. So he just sort of dropped in for an off-the-record examination of the famed Hillside Strangler. Next up was Dr. Ralph Allison, brought in from, of all places, Santa Cruz, California. He finished up with Bianchi on April 19th, just one day before Hitler's birthday, and Watkins returned the next day to administer a Rorschach test. The following day, April 21st, one day after Hitler's birthday, Angelo Buono's house was searched for the very first time. The home was found to be immaculately neat, and amazingly enough, it reportedly contained not a single fingerprint, which would tend to indicate that Bono had been tipped off prior to the search. Also, I'm not sure that I would be able to empty my house of all fingerprints. Even if I... What?
You can't. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
not feasible.
Yeah, that's crazy. How do
The
you
only
do
way
that?
that works is if the person actually doesn't live there.
Yeah, you have... I mean, yeah, but no fingerprints?
Right.
Nobody lives there. Nobody's lived there a long time, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think fingerprints degrade pretty rapidly, but like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Wow, voting Holy West the Pope, says John DeWald 9399. Jolly West
the Pope. Yeah.
Imagine if he was the Pope.
The church would wait during this time. This was John the 23rd. Well, Jolly West probably wouldn't have done well. No, this was well after that.
John the 23rd was only Pope for like 2 months.
No, he wasn't. He oversaw the entire Vatican II Council.
I thought he like called it and then promptly died. He was a short-lived Pope either way.
Yeah. All right, hold on. Who was Pope in 1979?
It might have already been.
It was John Paul II. Jesus, yeah,
true.
he was around for a really long time.
He was the second longest Pope ever.
Yeah, no way that Jolly West would have been better than JP2. Yeah,
I don't know how Polish John Paul II. I don't know how Polish Jolly West was.
I don't think he was Polish at all. I'm pretty sure he was like a heavily Americanized secular Jew.
Yeah.
Also, don't want to miss this one. Sex Frequent says, what is pubic hair loss measured on? The Southwood scale? It's pretty good. I'm a Southwooding groiper. Let's see. Amazingly enough, tipped off prior to the search. Okay. In May, Vienna-born Martin Orn, sent in by the state, took a turn at examining Bianchi. Orn was another False Memory Syndrome Foundation luminary who received extensive CIA funding and who, probably not coincidentally, had testified at the SLA trial. In June, Dr. Saul Fairstein of Beverly Hills took his turn with Bianchi, and in July, Dr. Lund returned for an on-the-record examination. Lund's role was to build the prosecution's case to try Bianchi in Los Angeles as the Hillside Strangler. As such, Lund's examination concentrated almost exclusively on discussion of LA killings. Like Orn and Fairstein, Lund largely dismissed the notion that Ken was suffering from multiple personality disorder. Others have claimed that Bianchi displayed at least 4 distinct personalities, who were named Ken, Steve, Billy, and Friend. Salerno and Grogan, as well as most of Bianchi's chroniclers, have claimed that the symptoms displayed by the suspect were an obvious ruse. Dr. John Watkins, to this day, sticks by his initial diagnosis of MPD. Does that really help? Like, does that help you at all? Like, I don't understand why MPD would help you, because if one of your other personalities did it, right? Well, that personality lives in your body, so that it's going to prison.
Yeah,
right?
the way English law works, it's like heirs of the body. It's not heirs of the mind. Your body account.
Yeah. On October 2nd, 1980, Veronica Lynn Compton, a playwright and actress and the daughter of an LA area editorial cartoonist,
Tell me more.
Yeah, was arrested for attempted murder in Bellingham.
Hot.
Amazing how quickly it switches as when it's a woman murdering things. You know, it's funny. It's funny because we opened this with saying you were the ideal male victim. Like, we did.
Here we go.
The attack was said to be an attempt to commit a copycat killing that would cast doubts on the incarcerated Bianchi's guilt in the earlier killings. Strangely, Compton's victim did not bother to report the incident until several days after the alleged attempt was made on her life. Compton had been sexually active from an early age, as evidenced by the fact that she was only 23, and yet She had an 8-year-old son. Whoa.
What was her name?
Veronica Lynn Compton.
Veronica.
Is it, fellas?
Compton. Ooh, let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
Okay. Hold on. Veronica Lynn Compton is open.
Put up the one where she's in ropes.
This one?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fellas, presumably, I don't even know if this is real or from like the TV show.
That is a proto e-girl right there.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, oh wow, hold on. This is a Sandbatch 10.
Yeah, she's pretty close.
That's a Sandbatch 10. This is a I would need to be self-medicated in order to make this work. But, there were times in my life where it would have happened. So, I'm not too good to say it. Anyway, she was a ride or die because she tried to get Bianchi off. So
Sam Brickman says Denisovan baddie spotted.
I like it. Gabe has multiple awoogas. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, she's a ride or die though. Like she tried to commit a copycat killing to throw it into question whether or not he was doing it. She had an 8-year-old son. She reportedly slept with numerous Hollywood figures, including a lawyer agent who was later killed in an unsolved murder case. She confided to Bianchi that she herself had killed before, and that she shared with him an interest in necrophilia. Gross. Seems a little cold.
Can you imagine that letter? I too share an interest in fucking dead people.
It seems harder for a woman, doesn't it?
I don't want to go.
There are ways.
Let's stick to the straight and narrow here.
On October 19th, Bianchi appeared before a judge and entered a guilty plea based on a deal that had been worked out with Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. The deal allowed the state of Washington to avoid a trial that would have revealed the state's case to be rather dubious. That case was built primarily on hair and fiber evidence, which is inherently problematic, and which is also, it should be noted, by far the easiest type of evidence to plant. The official version of events was filled with discrepancies and such odd events as evidence strangely turning up at the crime scene the day after it was combed over by investigators following the discovery of the bodies. Nevertheless, Ken entered a guilty plea and agreed to testify against Buono in exchange for a life sentence to be served in California. Even though the possibility existed that he would still receive death sentences for the charges pending in California. In other words, Bianchi gained absolutely nothing from the plea deal offered to him and guaranteed himself a life sentence at minimum. Ken had worked with his attorney until late into the night before his court appearance. He was instructed to stare at his hands while repeating the words, "These hands have killed," before entering the courtroom to ensure that he did not back away from the agreement to enter the guilty plea. Within 24 hours, Ken was on his way back to Los Angeles. Along the way, he was questioned by Salerno and Grogan and got many of the details of the crimes wrong, which did not seem to faze the two detectives in the least. Within days of his arrival in LA, he had received additional life terms. Shortly after his arrival, though, Ken began to have doubts about the deal he had made, and by November, he was insisting on his innocence. That same month, Angelo Buono's Glendale home suddenly vanished. It had been bulldozed on the orders of the owner of the glass shop that sat next door. Buono, who by that time was sitting in a special security section of the county jail alongside his son Peter, a former Marine and longtime PCP addict, had signed over the who is
How does somebody become a long-term PCP addict? Like
ask Chuck Berry.
is that what he was into?
Yeah, Chuck Berry was into PCP. That was like his whole thing.
Damn.
Yeah, you turn into Chuck Berry if you get addicted to PCP.
Open a fucking family diner in Missouri and film women using the bathroom in it?
Probably. I mean, PCP is a hell of a drug. Good. Yeah. Johnny Be Good. Johnny B on PCP. With okay, where was it? PCP addict. There we go. Had signed over the deed to the property. The glass shop owner denied that he had colluded with Buono to destroy evidence, and he was never charged with committing a crime. Around the same time, prosecutor Roger Kelly opted to drop all the remaining murder charges against Bianchi, thereby giving up the leverage that the state intended to use to compel Ken to testify against his cousin. Kelly also reportedly attempted to break down and discredit the testimony of two prosecution witnesses. Nevertheless, a nearly year-long preliminary trial for Buono was begun. Assigned to Judge Ronald George, George had attended Beverly Hills schools and then the prestigious École Internationale de Geneviève
in Paris.
Genève, I should say, which functions as something of an intelligence prep school. It's no Oxford. Founded in 1924 by a League of Nations group, it is attended by the sons of diplomats, European royalty, and finance capitalists. The Jews. George next attended Princeton University. By the age of 30, he was arguing before the U.S. Supreme Court to have the death penalty reinstated in California. In 1972, he was appointed to the bench by nominal conservative Ronald Reagan. Nice. Good job, McGowan. You got him. And in 1977, he was elevated to the Superior Court by nominal
That was an
liberal,
interesting comment, Dave.
Yeah, by nominal liberal Jerry Brown. Yeah, that's right. On July 13th, 1981, Kelly, backed by District Attorney John Vandekamp. Actually, you know what? Jerry Brown is the subject of one of my favorite Dead Kennedy songs, California Uber Alice.
Jerry Brown.
Yeah, always smiles and never frowns. Soon he'll be president. He almost made it. Zex Freakman, who up Yarvin they Curtis. That's right. I always Yarvin my mold bug. Let's see. On July 13th, 1981, Kelly, backed by District Attorney John Vandekamp, moved to drop all charges against Buono. Judge George, in a highly unusual move, ruled that the case be prosecuted. Kelly promptly withdrew, clearing the way for George to assign the case to the state's attorney general, George Duke Mahan, which I don't know what this name is spelled DeukMejan.
We're rolling with Duke
Mahan. Duke Majan. Duke Majan this has to be Armenian, doesn't it? That has to be Armenian.
We're rolling with Duke Mayhem.
Duke Mayhem. All right. On November 6th, jury selection began. In a rather unlikely development, 10 of the 12 jurors who were seated worked in civil service positions. These men and women spent the next 2 years of their lives hearing the case against Angelo Buono. Kenneth Bianchi alone delivered 5 months of testimony. In order for Bianchi's testimony to be heard, however, it had to be determined whether he had been hypnotized in Washington. If so, his testimony would have been disallowed under California law. Amazing.
Judge, who do you call in to determine whether someone's been hypnotized? That seems like a niche that was like established and created by exactly one person.
You know, oh yeah, exactly.
The need to determine whether
I'm a hypnotic forensics specialist.
Right.
Hypnotic forensics is one government contractor.
And incidentally enough, he can also determine whether or not you're a member of a totalist cult.
That's right. Thank you. Thank God for Jolly West. Yeah. Let's see. Uncle Ted in chat says y'all didn't finish Bundy. Haven't gotten to Bundy yet. He's got a whole section.
Don't worry, Ted Kaczynski. We're gonna get to your buddy Bundy.
To the other Uncle Ted.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, man, a 2-year long trial. That sounds fucking hellish.
Doesn't it? Imagine literally, I like Dave shouting out the fucking that's 2 years at state-sponsored minimum wage.
I mean, no, it's not minimum wage. It's like $15 a day now.
Oh yeah, it's even less.
Yeah. So let's see. In a rather unlikely development, 10 of the 12 jurors who were seated worked in civil service positions. Actually, you know what? That's not. So I've been on a jury multiple times, and I've actually been on a grand jury before.
Have you really?
Yeah. Grand juries meet for 3 months. So
yeah.
And
you just like doing it. You don't do any of the things to get out of it.
Yeah. That's right.
I immediately picked that one up. I'm like,
grand juries decide indictments.
Yeah. You're such a cap. That's so you.
Yeah, but a lot of the times they'll tell you how long it's going to take, right? Mm-hmm. And if they were at all honest about this taking 2 years, most people would say, fuck no, I can't do that. How could I possibly do that? But if they work for the state of California, like if they have civil service positions, all state and government employees like have just built in, they can get out for jury duty. So it makes complete sense. The other 2 people, right? 10 out of 12 were civil service. The other 2 were probably fucking retired.
So yes, it's 2 retired dudes, 2 retired, very interested women, and 10 civil servants who are getting paid the same no matter what the fuck they do.
Correct. Yeah, and I mean,
this is the jury. This is the jury. This jury right here is all. The jury itself is rigged to make this thing go for years and years and years.
In a lot of cases, civil servants who are on juries do get their salary and they get their day rate for the jury duty. Yeah. So it's not actually that's like a whole. That's not a conspiracy. That's a structural. There are structural reasons why that would be the case. Now you can say that shouldn't be that way, obviously, but yeah.
Waste, fraud, and abuse.
2 years of their lives. It would have been disallowed under California law if he had been hypnotized. Judge George accommodated the prosecution by concurring with the opinion of covert operative Martin Orne that Bianchi had faked both his hypnotism and his dissociative disorder. The judge did disallow Bianchi's Bellingham confession tapes, ruling that they had not been made under oath. This was not likely an effort by the judge to prevent the railroading of the defendant, but rather to avoid having the trial's verdict overturned on appeal. The tapes, which showed Bianchi confessing to the crimes in an even, matter-of-fact, emotionless voice, were entered into evidence in a way that would not compromise the verdict. They were entered by the defense. The defense also opened a door that allowed the state to call as rebuttal witnesses 3 young women who had been held by Buono as enslaved prostitutes. Comfort women, they're called. Their testimony had been earlier disallowed by the judge. After doing a considerable amount of damage to their client's case, the defense rested on August 2nd, 1983. After noting for the jury that both Charlie Chaplin and Lewis Carroll shared with Angelo a fondness for underage girls. In a highly unusual move, the judge opted to sequester the jury for the duration of their deliberations, even though they had been free for the entire 2-year duration of the trial itself. Well, that makes sense. Because otherwise they would have been like in a hotel, couldn't go home and see their families for 2 years. He would have been a prison sentence. sequestered during deliberations. He also specifically instructed them to return verdicts on the numerous counts separately, which was another highly unusual jury instruction. The first guilty verdict was delivered after 10 days of deliberations, appropriately enough on Halloween Day, 1983. By the time the deliberations were through, Buono had been convicted on 9 of 10 counts. Perhaps sensing that his defense team did not have his best interests in mind, Buono requested that he be allowed to represent himself for the penalty phase of the trial. His request was denied. On January 9th, 1984, Buono was formally sentenced to life in prison. Let's see.
It's a very unusual.
Randall Shurker says, Martin Orne, another guy who was photographed with Jolyon West in the SLA case and did his own CIA research. Yeah. Orne was on the defense team for Patty Hearst with Jolly West and what's her face from the cult deprogramming group. She also was at, I always forget her name. She was also at UCLA. In the aftermath of the trial, Van de Kamp was elected to replace outgoing Attorney General George Duke Mayhem, who was elevated to the office of governor of the state of California. His underling, Robert Philibosian, became the new LA district attorney. Prosecutors Roger Boren and Michael Nash were both appointed to the bench by Governor Duke Mayhem, after Nash prosecuted the death penalty appeal of Douglas Clark, whose case will be examined in the next chapter. Judge Ronald George was elevated to the California Supreme Court and ultimately was named its Chief Justice. Defense counsel Gerald Chaliff now serves as the senior advisor to the city attorney's office at the time of writing, of course. While there is a very strong probability that the two cousins were involved in the killings, it is just as likely that others were involved as well. Many believe that a police officer was directly involved. Several were questioned during the course of the investigation, and a few who were conclusively linked to the times and places of the disappearances and or the body drop sites could not account for their time. Another suspect was a man named George Shamshak, who escaped from a Massachusetts prison around the time that the killings began, and who was recaptured around the time that they ended. Shamshak confessed to the murders and even offered the press that what he said were audio tapes of some of the killings. He also claimed that a Beverly Hills resident named Peter Mark Jones was involved. If he had audio recordings of the murders, then he invented ASMR.
I was just to point out, in case people were wondering, yes, we are in fact living in a Thomas Pynchon novel here.
Shamshak with these fucking names. Duke Mayhem, Philibosian, Shamshak. Yes. Yeah. One of these guys is named Cherry Coke. Yeah. Jones was arrested and released, and then he promptly left the city and was quickly forgotten. As for the Washington murders, Bianchi maintained that an accomplice performed the killings. The man, identified only as Greg, was known to the police. He was killed in a freak motorcycle accident near the body drop site shortly after Kenneth Bianchi's arrest. September 2002, Angelo Buono died in prison. Kenneth Bianchi continues to serve his time. I actually think Ken Bianchi might still be in prison.
Yep, he's alive. I've already checked.
I checked. Ken Bianchi.
Oh, we're doing Bundy now. Come on.
What? It's the three of them.
Okay.
So, John Wayne Gacy was born.
Ladies.
Life was never easy for him. John Wayne Gacy was born a poor black child. He was born the son of an abusive alcoholic father, as his sister and mother both attested to in court. Oh, good. Different people, not his sister mother. Little else had been written about John's early years. Although it is known that the senior Gacy constantly belittled his son and once shot the boy's dog, he was also known to beat John's mother. I will tell you, if you kill the dog, you kill the dog. Not a very good person.
Not a good person.
Honestly,
if someone put you in the bad category, not only not good,
puts you in the bad category. Honestly, I'm now pushing for John Wayne Gacy forgiveness because his dog was murdered when he was a boy.
I wouldn't go that far.
I don't know. Can we commute his death sentence after it has been served?
He's already dead too.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm with you.
As a teenager, Gacy worked in Las Vegas, both at a mortuary and as an ambulance attendant. At the mortuary, it was said that he had a habit of sleeping in the embalming room amongst the corpses.
Red flag.
He was fired after some of those corpses were found to have been partially undressed.
Flag is getting redder.
It's getting redder and turgid and a little veiny. It was fire. Man, necrophilia is really a big tell, isn't it? Like
it is now.
I wonder how often the necrophiles are like killing just because I'm just saying how many necrophiles
are there? What's the rate
of
necrophilia that doesn't involve serial murder? I've wondered that myself.
Yeah, basically, because like necrophilia, it's really gross and perverted, but ultimately it's basically vandalism, right?
I'm also not entirely certain it really happens. Like, it's one of those things I'm actually very skeptical of.
What do you mean? People fuck sex dolls. Why wouldn't they fuck?
I don't think that so many of these serial killers like later half-ass confess to necrophilia. That like I think it has something to do with these psychologists that descend on them after they're arrested.
Did you ever fuck a corpse? Sure, buddy. If you say so.
I think they get DDD'd in the initial into incarceration.
Okay. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I guess, but if he was fired for suspicion of being a corpse diddler, do
we know that this actually happened?
Yeah, I mean, do we have? Yeah, of course. Do we have records of the time period? Right. Who knows? But I do wonder what the rate of necrophilia is outside of serial killing. Let's see. But I was going to say, I wonder how many if there are necrophiliacs, and this some percentage.
This next sentence is totally wild.
Hold on. And some of them become serial killers. What percentage of the ones who become serial killers because they just like don't have a ready supply of corpses?
I mean, presumably a lot. If you're into fucking dead ladies and we're fresh out of dead ladies, you don't really have much of a choice, Either go without or you got to create a dead lady.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's
the economics of the situation indicate that somebody who likes fucking dead people is probably at some point in their life going to make a dead person.
So I have a modest proposal. Okay. All right. You know how you can donate your body to science?
Yeah.
Why can't you just donate your body to commerce?
Yeah. Like here, look, like it's like we'll do methadone clinics. It's like, okay, look, here's a dead person. We got her all cleaned up and you could come in and do whatever you need to do. And
can you just have they donated their body to, needy necrophiles. And you just, embalm them,
So many people would go for that, but like,
I bet beggars cannot be choosers.
True.
Right.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's not a lot of college age ladies that would donate their bodies to this, unless we could get some like pictures of really hot necrophiles and like maybe put them in a mag. There's ways to do this.
Oh yeah. Well, women usually only idolize dead men. It's usually actually, you know what? Now that I'm saying that, okay, it's just like this guy who got iced in Minnesota. How they're like running because he's kind of like a nebbish dude, and they're running his photos through AI filters to make him more handsome.
Yeah.
Right. And like some chicks are like jilling off that he died that way. Right. Yeah. I bet necrophilia is actually way more common amongst women than men.
It's probably true.
I bet it is. Women are weirder like that. Huh. Interesting. Anyway,
Meanwhile, back at the ranch.
back at the ranch in the 1960s, John lived in Waterloo, Iowa, where he owned several businesses, including 4 restaurants, a clothing design firm, and a motel.
All right. Pause.
Paused.
That is, to me, one of the wildest sentences I've ever seen. Because
He was a restaurateur.
I have been to Waterloo, Iowa before. Okay.
Okay.
And it is
Mostly known as the site of the famous defeat suffered by Napoleon.
Yeah. I have been to Waterloo, Iowa, and it is actually on my list of, it's actually permanently enshrined at the top of my list of worst places I've ever been. Okay.
Okay. Amazing.
No reason for it to not be bulldozed tomorrow, including the people who live there, unfortunately. However, the fact that this is a town that I can't see supporting 4 restaurants. Okay.
Well, maybe in the 60s before Waterloo, Iowa lost its industry.
Right. I can't see it supporting 4 restaurants in total, much less 4 owned by the same dude who also owns a clothing design firm there.
Okay.
What kind of clothes are being like
well, he was a clown later, so maybe he was
Paris runway here and be like, like design house.
Who are you wearing, Gacy? Who are you wearing, Gacy? Actually, you know what? Find me an original Gacy. Find me an original Gacy. I hope he was doing like elaborate Western wear.
Wasn't he? I think he was, but wasn't he an artist too?
Yeah, he was. I think he had like drawings or something. He was a real Renaissance man, despite having a potato for a head and face.
Caravaggio was like this too, and he also killed a lot of ladies.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for him. Chat's doing really well. Let's see. Randall Shirker, I don't know what to make of things anymore. Elliot Roger has his own female fan club now. How cruel. Son of Hastra, I'm beginning to think the internet was a mistake. Sex frequent, I guarantee there have been freaky couples who have promised each other it's fair game whenever either one of them dies.
Yeah, that's true.
So true. And of course, EL, the ladies in the ER female fan club got that grip on him.
Did Elliot Roger, is he dead or is he in custody?
What? He died. Yeah.
Dude, I don't even remember that.
Yeah. Supreme Gentleman is no more.
Yeah.
Let's see. During that period of his life, he joined the JCs and quickly forged a bond with a man who soon became the local chapter president. This particular JC chapter was known at the time to be involved in prostitution, pornography, and various other crimes of vice. A local prosecutor identified Gacy's motel, managed by his newfound friend, as the hub of those activities. According to the prosecutor, the motel was a front for a gay and straight prostitution ring. Baseline by is known modern gay icon John Wayne Gacy.
Right. Well, okay.
What's it? JC's. It's like isn't that like a Chamber of Commerce thing? So they just had like a really down as hell Chamber of Commerce in Waterloo, Iowa.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, Waterloo. The fuck?
Interesting. Fuck Waterloo, Iowa. If anyone was from Waterloo, Iowa is listening to this,
fuck you.
Fuck you. Fuck you. Gacy was in the habit of hiring many young people of both sexes to work at his businesses. It's not really unusual. He owns 4 restaurants. He also reportedly set up what was described as a social club in his basement rec room, which he kept well stocked with drugs and alcohol to supply his numerous underage guests. Okay, that's a red flag. He was also
let's play it out.
He was also said by those who knew him at the time to control his wife and openly offer her sexual services to friends and colleagues. Just a giving guy. Take my wife, please.
with the 60s, you know.
Yeah. One former employee also said that Gacy always carried a gun. Based. On March 11th, 1968, Donald Voorhees Jr., the son of a JC and former Iowa state representative, gave a statement to police alleging that Gacy had assaulted and sodomized him. Imagine admitting that. In early May, Gacy was indicted by a grand jury, though no further action was taken for several months. On September 12th, John made a court appearance at which he was ordered to submit to a psychiatric examination at the ominously named Psychopathic Hospital of the State University of Iowa. Amazing. While in custody,
says, so you're telling me he was a fake cell?
Wait, who?
John Wayne Gacy.
I think he's talking about Elliot Rodger. Yeah.
Maybe.
Call that a pork mortem. Kind of forcing that one, but alrighty. While in custody there, he spoke freely to investigators of wholesale corruption among the city's elite.
This is exactly right. I'm telling you, while under investigation, he takes this moment to vet his fucking grievances with the fucking local globalist conspiracy.
Amazing. He talked of gambling, prostitution, pornography, wife swapping, the corruption and complicity of the local police, jazz music. He supplied the names of numerous JCs, police personnel, and various other prominent individuals who were involved in criminal enterprises.
He's clearly a Trump voter.
When brought before a judge, Gacy threw himself at the mercy of the court and entered a guilty plea. On December 3rd, 1968, he was sentenced to a 10-year term. He served less than 2 of those years, earning parole on June 18th, 1970. While in prison, he somehow managed to always have money, cigars, and civilian shirts, all difficult commodities to attain for most prisoners. According to some reports, Gacy received electroshock and aversion therapy while incarcerated, allegedly to cure him of his homosexuality. Or, just for fun.
You never know.
Just 8 months after his release, he was again arrested, this time for disorderly conduct. Despite the violation, just 8 months after that, he was released from parole. Another 8 months after that, on the summer solstice of 1972, he was again arrested and charged with aggravated battery and reckless conduct. Gacy had allegedly offered a young man a ride on June 7th, identified himself as a police officer, and then attempted to handcuff the boy. Failing in that endeavor, Gacy then clubbed him on the back of his neck, kicked him, and then pursued him with his car and struck him down. Whomst among us? Curiously, the charges were dismissed against Gacy, whose fingerprint card on file with the local police carried the alias Colonel Gacy. On July 1975, the first known victim whose death would be attributed to John Gacy disappeared. The young man, John Butkovich, not beating the Pinchon, not beating the Pinchon accusations, was an employee of Gacy's construction company, which specialized in drugstore remodels. Seems very specific. Gacy's home was later found to be fully stocked with an array of pharmaceuticals. Just one night before his disappearance, Butkovich had been involved in a disturbance at a friend's house. He was rumored to have gone to Puerto Rico to traffic drugs, and his family received a collect call from a woman in San Juan who claimed that John was alive and well. Someone apparently made an effort to thwart a missing persons investigation. Boys and young men continued to disappear for the next several years, though no one really paid much attention. The missing boys were routinely considered runaways by the police, despite pleas from many of the parents to investigate their sons' disappearances as missing persons cases. Yeah, but you know what? I'm sure that the Waterloo, Iowa Police Department had a lot to do, right? Like, I'm sure that like dozens of boys going missing had nothing to, it's just, they had stuff. They had stuff going on. On January 6th, 1978, Gacy was arrested for deviant sexual conduct, but the assistant state's attorney rejected the filing of felony charges. 6 months later, Gacy was charged with battery. A 27-year-old man had been picked up and then knocked out with a rag placed over his mouth. He awoke in a park with burns on his face and a bleeding rectum. Whomst among us? Again, the man had been picked up from the city's gay district, where Gacy was well known and widely believed to be a cop. The victim gave police the license number of Gacy's car. He was soon taken into custody. Several court dates were allowed to pass with no action taken on the charges. John Wayne Gacy was, after all, a very well-connected guy. He served as a lighting commissioner and a Democratic Party precinct captain. He claimed to have been an aide to Chicago Mayor Richard Daley. He was known to be on friendly terms with Illinois Attorney General William Scott. He also claimed that local columnist Mike Royko and local TV anchorman Walter Jacobson were good friends of his. He once had his photo taken with First Lady Rosalind Carter. The image signed to John Gacy, best wishes, Rosalind Carter. In the photo, Gacy is wearing a Secret Service S lapel pin, indicating that he had been given a high-level security clearance. Another hint of Gacy's political connections was provided by an observation made by one of his prosecutors. 2 items on Gacy's Chicago police report were blacked out, indicating that they were FBI matters. I think he probably knew all these people because he was gay.
Damn well, they're Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, he was probably just slurping it. You know,
I mean, my tendency is to believe that secret gay accusations are the distinct realm of the Republican Party.
Oh, just open gay. Yeah, but I mean, at this time.
Yeah, I mean, even more so than I think. This is when Nixon, this is when Nixon was talking about, like the Orange County machine, so on and so forth.
They're all poofters.
Just like that.
John also laid claim to having an organized crime connections, which is not surprising given the fine line between police and organized crime. McGowan.
Ace Dave.
McGowan. Gacy claimed not only that's libertarian McGowan is coming out. Gacy claimed not only that he himself worked for the syndicate, but also that he was a cousin of a local mob figure, Tony Accardo. Gacy continued in Chicago his practice from Iowa of surrounding himself with young people. He frequently entertained as a clown at hospitals, orphanages, and private parties. He also hired a steady stream of teenage boys to work for his construction firm, at least 3 of whom went missing, another of whom followed an interesting path that will be examined in the next chapter.
What do you want him to do? Hire Mexicans?
That's nowadays, you couldn't get a corrupt gay rapist like this nowadays out of white people. You'd need to have an Arab. Like, we're not making them like this anymore. Let's see. Gacy can, steady stream went missing. All right. On the night of December 11th, 1978, a young man named Rob Peist disappeared. He had been seen outside of the pharmacy where he was then employed, talking to Gacy about a job with his construction company. The Peist family focused their suspicions on John Gacy and pharmacy owner Phil Torf, who was evasive when questioned about the boy's disappearance and who refused to provide Gacy's address for unexplained reasons. Torf remained at the pharmacy that night with his friends until 1 a.m., 3 full hours after closing time. The Peist family quickly grew angry with the police for their handling of the case. They began threatening to storm the Gacy house. In order to pacify the family and prevent them from acting on their threats, police agreed to begin surveillance of John Gacy. Assigned to the task was Special Delta Unit of the Des Plaines Police.
Des Plaines.
Let's see. What followed was a surreal game of cat and also cat, in which Gacy at all times, but joined the surveillance.
At times, all but.
At times, all but. You're right. joined the surveillance team, whining and dining his alleged pursuers, inviting them to his home and allowing them to ride along with him in his car. At other times, he did the police ride along in reverse. At other times, he would drive maniacally around town with the Delta unit in pursuit, reportedly hitting speeds of up to 100 miles per hour, even in school zones. School zones? Jeepers! Amazingly, he was never stopped during such escapades, let alone ticketed or arrested. Police also searched Gacy's house, which was said to be meticulously neat. The search yielded a number of interesting items. A high school ring that belonged to one of the missing boys, an Illinois driver's license issued to another boy, marijuana and rolling papers, a vast supply of pharmaceuticals, a switchblade knife, a pair of handcuffs, police badges, a hypodermic syringe, numerous items of clothing that were obviously too small for Gacy, a photo lab receipt later traced to Rob Peist, an empty brown bottle that contained chloroform, blood-stained rugs, a homemade stock. I assume he means stock is in like you put your head in your hands through.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. One room in the home was completely filled with clown pictures. The crawl space under that was the goon cave. The crawl space underneath the house where employees had been asked to dig trenches was covered with a layer of lime, useful for hastening the decomposition of bodies. There were nearly 30 of them buried there in shallow graves. More had been dumped into the Des Plaines River, some 65 miles from Gacy's home. Police opted not to arrest Gacy at the time of the search, despite the seemingly incriminating evidence found in his home, including 30 bodies.
What?
And despite the fact that they had received complaints from at least 5 assault victims, 3 in Chicago alone, all alleging druggings and torture administered by Gacy, and despite the fact that Gacy still had charges pending against him from the incident earlier in the year. However, Gacy did have an alibi for the evening that checked out. He had been at the hospital at the side of his uncle, who died the very night that Rob Peist disappeared. On the eve of the winter solstice, Gacy was arrested for the final time, although not on murder charges, but for possession of marijuana, the devil leaf. The devil's lettuce. The devil's lettuce, they say. Reefer madness. Just the day before his arrest, the conviction of Elmer Wayne Henley in Texas had been reversed. Henley had been convicted a few years earlier in 1974 for his participation in what one of Gacy's chroniclers described as a homosexual torture ring that killed 27 boys.
Yeah, no, that's the like lackey of Dean Corll.
Oh, got it. In Henley and his 2 accomplices provided quite a model for Gacy to follow. The trio lured young boys to the home of Dean Corll, where they were tortured, raped, and killed on a special torture board in Corll's plastic draped bedroom. Their bodies were then buried beneath a layer of lime in Corll's rented boathouse. While the boathouses usually are on water. So I'll just accept that you could bury them in it. While the parents of several of the victims received phone calls or were sent letters assuring them that their sons were still very much alive. In Houston, as in Chicago, police insisted on classifying the growing number of missing boys as runaways. Gacy's marijuana arrest prompted a second search of his home, during which the bodies in his crawl space were discovered. Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. So the first time there's no bodies discovered.
No, none discovered. Just undoubtedly present.
Dave. You're fucking us around with time here, Dave.
Yeah. You said that wrong. Gacy's marijuana arrest prompted a second search of his home, during which time the bodies in his crawl space were discovered. How they were not discovered during the earlier search or detected during the numerous visits to the Gacy home by his surveillance team remains a bit of a mystery. Every corner of the house was said to literally reek of death due to the decomposition of the bodies buried in the shallow graveyard just beneath the floorboards. The second search also turned up a garage freezer that contained unmarked frozen meat and a container full of what inspectors suspected was blood. These items were later claimed to be nothing more than stewed tomatoes and non-human meat. Although one would think seasoned homicide investigators would know the difference between stewed tomatoes and blood. Yes, you would
I
think
mean,
that.
maybe not, you know.
They have completely different textures. I mean, even look, I don't know if you've ever had a like bun bo hue, but it is a Vietnamese blood soup, and the blood is in cubes, right? In it, like it's boiled stewed blood, and it comes in these cubes.
Interesting. I have not.
It's basically like the texture of it's like the texture of tofu.
Yeah. That
But
makes
it
sense.
tastes like pate, obviously.
Interesting.
It's going to be pretty irony. But yeah, I mean, that's pig blood. I imagine that it probably serves the same, it would behave the same way as human blood, I would think.
I've had duck in its blood before. Which is like it's like a duck that's roasted, and then it's like the sauce that it's served
is made of it.
There's a mixture of blood and butter.
I'd try that.
Yeah, no, it's good.
It's good. It's good. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, in the Vietnamese soup, it basically tastes like pate. So, I'd imagine it would taste like that. A little irony.
Low key, I love Vietnamese food. I don't know how I've never tried it.
Yeah, the Vietnamese food's pretty good. Pretty good. I mean, the French influence really helped.
That's why I like it. That's it.
All right. Let's see. Yeah, I love how it's later claimed to be nothing more than stewed tomatoes and non-human meat. It's like alarmingly non-specific. It's like
we don't know what it was, but we know what it's not.
Non-human. What do you got in there? Not human meat.
Yeah.
Didn't want to say beef. You didn't want to say pork. Not even long pig. While his home was being searched, Gacy was taken to Holy Family Hospital for a medical examination, allegedly due to complaints of chest pains. I mean, he was pretty fat guy. Immediately upon his release from the hospital, John read and signed a Miranda waiver and began confessing to the murders. One of his first questions to police was, "Who else do you have in the station? There are others involved." Gacy was then asked if the others were involved directly or indirectly, to which he responded, "Directly. They participated." Asked who these others might be, he answered simply, "My associates." He also asked where Rob Peist was, to which he answered, "I don't know. I didn't transport him." When he asked who did, he replied, "I can't say." This interrogation was cut shortly by Sergeant Long and then later resumed with two attorneys at Gacy's side. No further mention was made of any accomplices, and the issue does not appear to have been pursued thereafter. Perhaps notably, though, the homicide rate in the Chicago area soared following Gacy's arrest, possibly indicating that a large cleanup operation ensued. And on December 28th, a week after John's arrest, a fresh body was fished from the Des Plaines River. Let's see. Pig Roast Publishing says, "I used to play punk shows at the Fireside Bowl in Chicago, a bowling alley that Gacy was a member at. Creepy. I think that he had a plaque there for some bowling achievement. He was afraid of clowns."
Yeah, Gacy is such a Chicago style.
Chicago. I feel like
pizza. It's a Chicago style serial killer.
I feel like he has to. I feel like Thomas 777 has to know him.
I'll ask him next time I see him. I'll be like, "Dude, come on."
Yeah.
I think Thomas grew up in California, so maybe not.
Hey, also since we have you here, Pig Roast Publishing, go to pigroastpublishing.com. Buy Sean Kilpatrick's new book. I haven't read it yet, but I did get it. And I read his tome called Tantrums, which was previously self-published. Sean Kilpatrick has a play which features Jolly West.
Oh, lots of familiar names on the lineup there. Cletus Crow.
Yeah.
Great work over at Pig Roast Publishing.
Yep.
We love our friends at Pig Roast.
We love our pig roasting compatriots. That's right. We stand small publishers here on LMD and Tookies more broadly. Let's see. Although Gacy confessed to being a mass murderer, he had very little knowledge of the crimes to which he confessed. He claimed, for instance, that all of the victims were strangled, but forensics evidence suggested that at least 13 of them had in fact been suffocated. Tisk, tisk, John. He provided a map of the locations of the bodies under his house that press reports claimed was accurate, even though it actually contained numerous discrepancies. Gacy was able to recall sketchy details of only 5 of the killings. Of the other 28, he had no memory at all. PCP is a hell of a drug. He claimed that the murders began in 1974, but then later stated that the first occurred in January 1972. He attributed all of the murders to an alter personality that he referred to as Jack Hanley. John was denied bail and sent to Cermak Hospital, which was the medical wing of the local jail, and kept isolated from other inmates. Jail personnel were instructed to have no contact with him either. Not long into his stay there, Gacy wrote a letter that read, "Since the dark shadow of Satan has come over me, it seems that my fair weather friends have run away." During his wow, he was 14 spiritually when he wrote that. During his second week at Cermak, he consented to an interview with the full cooperation of his attorney, during which he once again confessed to the murders. He claimed rather preposterously that the victims were mostly male prostitutes who he had killed over price disputes. This guy takes haggling very seriously. To explain how he had gained control of the young, healthy victims prior to killing them, Gacy put forth a dubious story about using a handcuff trick to get the young men to handcuff themselves.
Dude, there is a YouTube video of a guy who says that Gacy tried this on him, like a resort town on the Upper Peninsula.
Really?
So, yeah, I mean, Gacy's interesting because there seem to be a lot of survivors that just never said anything, you know?
Well, because if he was like cruising, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Who's going to admit to that shit in the 70s, right? Yeah. Let's see. On January 10th, 1979, not guilty pleas were entered on Gacy's behalf in response to the 7 murder counts that had been brought against him. On April 23rd, a grand jury handed down indictments on 26 additional counts, bringing the total to 33. 2 days later, Gacy entered not guilty pleas to the additional counts. Jury selection for his trial began in January 1980, despite intense pretrial publicity overshadowed for a time by news of the carnage at Jonestown. The venue of the trial was not changed. Instead, jurors were selected from another county and then sequestered. Remarkably, the jury selection process was over in just 4 days. It's pretty normal. The trial began on February 6, 1980. Following opening statements, the state called 60 witnesses to present its case against John Gacy. The defense's case, such as it was presented in less than a week. Gacy was clearly unhappy with the work of his legal team. In a letter to the judge, he complained, "I asked that my trial be stopped, and I haven't heard from you. When I asked my attorney as to why we were not putting on more witnesses, I am told that we don't have any money to bring in experts." The state began its rebuttal of the defense case on February 29th. Due to the numerous doors opened by mistakes made during the mistakes in scare quotes made during the abbreviated presentation of defense, it was given enormous latitude. Prosecutors were allowed to call, for instance, a number of witnesses who had survived attacks by Gacy. Their testimony had originally been excluded. These young men all told similar stories of druggings and torture that were highly damaging to the defense. It must be said here that these victims all told of being victimized solely by Gacy, which seems to indicate that he was indeed the sole perpetrator of the crimes committed against the 33 dead victims. What was never explained, however, was why it was that after the victims had been subdued, raped, and tortured, and were completely under the control of the alleged serial killer, they were subsequently released, very much alive and able to bear witness against the defendant. Serial killers, we are told, are essentially slaves to their unnatural desires, who, once they up the ante and began killing their victims, are unable to stop themselves from killing again and again. And yet we are to
Is
believe
Dave
that
a John Wayne Gacy truther?
I think he is. I think he's just
I mean, like the narrative here we're building up is that John Wayne Gacy maybe didn't do this shit.
no, I don't think that the narrative we're building up is that. I think the narrative we're building up is that John Wayne is that there was a network, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
There's a
Oh.
network of people working with him, and he
Not a
was the
lone wolf
fall
killer.
guy. Yeah. Yeah, we had a whole pack of lone wolves. That's right. Let's see. And yet we are to believe that John Wayne Gacy, purportedly one of the most successful and most deranged serial killers of all time, was able to torture his victims for hours on end, but then pull back from the edge and to opt to let some of them go now and then. We are to believe that he had no concern with leaving living witnesses that could easily have been disposed of in his crawl space.
See, no, I think here, like, we have to be making the case that he didn't do any of it.
Why?
Because,
Well, then how did all the corpses get into his crawl space?
well, he doesn't seem to understand any of this shit, Nothing about this story makes sense.
Fair enough.
Like, I mean, I feel like, I don't know, man. Find out how it ends.
Maybe he was just there for the diddling and he was like, sure, you can put the bodies in my basement. No big deal.
Well, Jack Hanley did it,
Oh, sure. He's just like, dang old Jack. Keep stacking them like cordwood in my basement. We're running out of space. My lime budget is through the roof. I have to imagine that a bunch of like rotting meat and lime in your basement would really be bad for the joists and the posts in your crawl space.
Yeah.
Like that's got to be really corrosive. It's like really bad for the house. Which, of course, should be a priority. Let's see. The possibility exists that Gacy was not actually able to kill alone, although he was clearly capable of raping and torturing his helpless victims. Perhaps as his initial statements to police indicated, there were others involved in the actual killings, and Gacy's house was just a convenient place to dispose of the bodies. Gacy himself suggested such a scenario in another of his letters to the judge. As you know, other than the so-called statements made by me and given in a self-serving manner by officers for the prosecution, there is only evidence that I owned the house that was used for bodies, their safekeeping. Gacy's statement was an accurate one, as outrageous as it may first appear to be. There are at least half a dozen people known to have keys to Gacy's home. Okay. Well, we just said that, and then we got McGowan. So, all right.
David's been fucking with us here.
All right.
I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel bad about windying Dave.
I think I might have turned off Johnny Walt with the blood talk.
Yeah.
I'm just saying no one would confuse. I'm just saying no one would confuse blood for stewed tomatoes. It's never going to happen.
Right.
Let's see. Oh my God, EL. I did it to a girl I dated for 2 weeks in middle school and told her about Gacy and how she should be more careful. For real, I was a total sociopath as a kid. It was a great way to gain. No. He said women line up to get handcuffed if you're sufficiently attractive. What is wild, and he says the handcuff trick works, by the way.
Yeah.
The alarming thing here is that it was middle school. Very alarming. Yeah. Of the surviving victims who testified against Gacy, okay, you know what? There were half a dozen people known to have keys to Gacy's home. Okay, so other than his immediate family, right? Other than his immediate family, you would think that anyone who walked into the house would be like, boy, it really smells like death in here. Yeah, it smells like dead boys. Why does this house smell like dead boys? Yeah. One of the surviving victims who testified against Gacy had a rather interesting story to tell. Under oath, he told of having a meeting with the police and the assistant state's attorney not long after his initial complaint was filed. At that meeting, he was not allowed to sign any complaints against Gacy, and he was bluntly informed that no action was going to be taken. Get out of here, you fucking faggot.
Literally.
The last rebuttal witness called was a man named James Hanley. Interesting, given that is very close to...
It's probably something related here.
Whose purpose was reportedly to discredit Gary's claim of having an alter personality named Jack Hanley. State claimed that Gacy had appropriated this man's name for his concocted alter personality in an attempt to avoid responsibility for his crimes. Prosecution claimed that the witness's belated appearance was due to the fact that they had investigators looking for Hanley for more than a year, but somehow the police computer didn't turn up his name. Shit ass fucking 1979 computer. This was a rather stunning claim given that Hanley was one of their own. He had been a plainclothes detective with the Chicago Police Department since the late 60s.
Damn.
Let's see. To no one's surprise, Gacy's jury reached a verdict on their first vote after less than 2 hours of deliberations. Found guilty on all 33 first-degree murder counts. Following just 2 more hours of deliberations and after the sentencing phase of the trial, the jury unanimously voted to impose the death sentence. While awaiting his scheduled execution, Gacy occupied his time painting portraits of clowns and Disney figures, a common pastime of convicted serial killers, many of whom consider themselves to be artists, including painters, poets, writers, and musicians. Sandbatch, what do you know about poetry?
I know that you were haranguing me about my book not being out yet.
I was not haranguing you.
My associates and I were busy.
There was no haranguing, sir. I just wanted to be ready with a link to it should you have had it available this week. That's all. I was going to promote it.
I was busy. You have to get in touch with my associates.
No problem. Will do. I'll call her and her. Let's see. Elmer Wayne Henley, like Gacy, whiles away his time in prison painting scenes that are far removed from the violent crimes he was convicted of. While it is abundantly clear that Gacy was involved in the abductions and murders, it seems unlikely that he was acting alone. In addition, there we go. Just like I said. In addition to the facts already presented here that indicate the possible involvement of others, there were other indications that something was not quite right about the Gacy case. The Casey. That elements of the police were complicit in the operations. Following the disappearance of one of Gacy's employees, Greg Godzik, John was not questioned by police for a full 3 months. Godzik's frustrated parents turned for help to private investigator Anthony Pellicano Jr., a shadowy character who tends to surface in organized crime in Hollywood circles, and who, as this is being written, is facing a variety of charges in Los Angeles in connection with a case he was working on for actor Steven Seagal. Pellicano. How odd it is that a guy named Pellicano would work for a guy with the last name Seagal. Almost like it was meant to be. Pellicano never checked out Gacy and later claimed that he had never been given the name by Godzik's parents, which was an interesting claim given that the primary reason for his hiring was to investigate the man that the police refused to investigate. Pellicano nevertheless maintained that he had been told that Greg worked at a gas station, not for John Gacy. Hey, Sandbatch, can you Jamie up Anthony Pellicano Jr., see what he's up to or what he's been up to? I'm pretty
sure there's a woman live tweeting that she agrees with the Serial Killer Association suddenly. Wow, fascinating.
What do you mean?
An actual real life relationship of mine falling apart in real time because of things that I'm saying on the air here.
Oh no.
It's a new experience for me.
But you're the victim. She's the killer.
It doesn't matter.
Oh no. Sorry. Godzik was reportedly seen still very much alive after the time of his reported abduction, as was at least one other victim and former Gacy employee, John Cizik. SZYC. In one of those bizarre coincidences that seem to surround serial killer cases, the Godzik home was burglarized the night before the story of John Wayne Gacy's arrest hit the airwaves. The family of victim Rick Johnston was convinced that Rick had been abducted by the Reverend Sung Myung Moon's Unification Church, the Moonies. An organization heavily steeped in mind control and with extensive connections to South Korea's version of the CIA, which was
that's definitely totally what's happening. I gotta go.
Oh no.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Godspeed and good luck.
All right, bye.
We've done it. We've done it. We've killed Sandbatch. Oh Lord. Well, now I have to talk about the Moonies. I really like the Moonies, actually. I'm kind of into them. I know that they allegedly are behind a bunch of the migrant waves into Japan and a bunch of weird corruption stuff. But there is a like one of the sons of Sung Myung Moon is a MAGA guy. So he ended up becoming an American, or maybe he was actually born here or something. But his hip hop name is Bullet King, and he runs a gun church, a Mooney gun church, and he's got a bullet crown, and he's got all this blinged out stuff. It's called Rod of Iron Ministries. Check this shit out. Like, this is a good look. This is a really good look. Like, you know, if you're already gonna be like a weird sort of heretic or whatever. And he runs a custom firearms company. Put this one out. Put out this Donald Trump Tommy gun with all this random shit on it for the 2016 election. But yeah, I kind of dig the Moonies. Let's see. Anyway, created and trained by our own CIA, the South Korea CIA. No surprise that the Korean intelligence community would have been created by the American intelligence community, since Korea was created by Americans. Victim John Mowry, a former Marine, was the second sibling in his family to fall prey to a sadistic killer. His sister Judith had been found stabbed to death in their apartment in November 1972. Ugh. As for the unnamed others who were possibly involved in the killings, there were any number of people who lived for varying periods of time in the Gacy home, or who regularly spent time there, all of whom denied knowledge of the crimes and the source of the stench permeating the house. One of Gacy's longtime employees and sometime house guest, identified only by the pseudonym of Dick Walsh, really getting closer and closer to Pinchonian names. Anyway, Dick Walsh was said to be evasive when questioned. He was given a polygraph examination, but his examiners claimed they were unable to render a definite opinion. There is no indication that further examinations were attempted. Another Gacy employee was Gordon Nebel, who reportedly worked at the company's bookkeeper. He was curiously misidentified in the logs that Gacy's surveillance team kept of his visitors, even though the officers were well aware of Nebel's identity and aware that he worked 2 days a week inside the death house. Two other associates of Gacy's, Donald Morrill and Ronald Rhodey, were known to have protected and shielded John from police during his period of surveillance. Neither of them appears to have been investigated in connection to the crimes, nor were any of the numerous names that appeared in Gacy's address book marked with a mysterious H. Whether any of those associates were involved in the deaths of the victims will likely ever be known. The man in the best position to provide answers to those types of questions was executed by the state of Illinois on May 10th, 1994. Yeah. That's right. Let's see. What is chat doing? Cap's coup has finally happened. Guys, why are you cheering? Yeah. Let's see. Gacy and Robert Ressler, the FBI serial killer inventor, grew up together in the same street. That's weird. That is weird. That's very weird. Ressler being the being the profiler, the FBI profiler guy. Yeah, there we go. Mindhunter, real guy grew up with Gacy. Odds of that, yeah, very, very poor. I mean, doing the profiling, look, inventing psychological profiling is like telling someone how to is like diagnosing a I don't know how to say this. I was gonna say it's like fixing a car when you have the Haynes manual, but like the thing, it's diagnosing the problem of a car when you have the Haynes manual. But basically, like if the intelligence community created these people and you have to figure out a way to identify who they are, you already have a cheat sheet because you know how to make them. So you just work backwards. It's not that hard, right? Yeah, that's right. So, okay, before we do Ted Bundy, let me do something real quick. Real quick. There we go. Okay. All right. So, look up Passkey, scary dude. Okay. Uncle Ted in chat is saying to look up Passkey. So Philip Passkey, we will go to Wikipedia. Philip Ronald Passkey was an American criminal and child pornographer from Chicago, Illinois. Let's see. In the mid-1970s, he was the closest associate of sex trafficker John David Norman and was briefly an employee of serial killer John Wayne Gacy. Wow, there we go. We just have the network done. Passkey was born on June 11th, 1953 in Chicago, Illinois. It was reported that his father worked for the city's 33rd ward and that Passkey had a violent temper and frequently cross-dressed. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Passkey was also openly bisexual, bold move, given that he was, I don't know, I guess we're going to say, in his teenage years in the 70s, or in the 60s. Yes, no, or it would be 70s. And a lengthy criminal record beginning at age 17 in 1971, with convictions for drug dealing, theft, battery, and murder. In a 1992 prison interview with John Wayne Gacy, once employed Passkey, he described Passkey as dangerous and stated that he used hard drugs, shared an apartment with a prostitute, and pimped girls and boys for sex or movies. Interesting. Getting called scary and dangerous by John Wayne Gacy is a strong play. Let's see here. On November 7th, 1973, Passkey, along with Alfred Bone, 20, and Richard Angel, 18, planned to rob 65-year-old coin collector Lewis McCurley. The attempted robbery took place at 7 p.m. at a second-floor apartment in Irving Park Road in Chicago, where McCurley was home watching television with his wife. Bone was armed with a knife. Angel had accompanied him with a handgun. Passkey's orders role was to act as a lookout for any oncoming witnesses. When McCurley opened the door, Bone and Angel asked if he had any coins for sale before forcing their way in. A struggle ensued. Bone stabbed McCurley in the chest. All three then fled the scene after McCurley's wife began to scream. McCurley would later succumb to his stab wounds. They were arrested and charged with murder and attempted armed robbery. Through a plea deal, Passkey and Angel's murder charges were dropped. In exchange, they pleaded guilty to attempted armed robbery. Both served prison time and were placed on probation. Bone would subsequently plead guilty and received a sentence of 14 to 20 years in imprisonment. And this guy died age 45 in 1998. Interesting. Hold on. There we go. Yeah. Oh, died of AIDS. There we go. Yeah, that'll do it. So yeah, unrelated murders. Yeah. After his release from prison, he relocated. Final arrest for possession of a controlled substances, and he died in 98 of AIDS. Who could have guessed? Who could have guessed? Yeah, rat a kitty porn ring. John David Norman was a sex offender who ran multiple child porn and prostitution rings in the 70s and 80s. As of 1977, he had an estimated 5,000 subscribers to his magazine, Hermes, across the country. Also had a potential links to serial killers Dean Corll and John Wayne Gacy. According to Gacy, Norman produced snuff films of young boys. However, no such films have been found to exist. I don't trust you, Wikipedia. I've been burned before. In 1973, the commander of the police youth division in Houston, Bernie M. Newman, stated that there was no known connection between Norman's operations and Corll's murders. Norman and Paskey first met in Chicago at Cook County Jail in 1973, and it is known that Norman had continued producing his newsletter behind the walls of the jail. She made pleas for bail at both him and for Paskey, whom he referred to as his right-hand man. Not a high praise. Paskey was released on probation in 1976 after serving time for the McCurley case. The funds for bail came from patrons of Norman's newsletter. Subsequently, a patron from California paid Norman's bail. Norman remained free until November 1976, when he was indicted on 5 counts. He was found guilty of contributing to the sexual delinquency of a child in order to serve 4 years and a day. After his release, Paskey registered both his and Norman's names to a Chicago post office box. The two shared an apartment on Wrightwood Avenue. On his probation record, it is stated that in both May and December 1976 that he was working for Norman and was earning $3 an hour. In January 77, a month after Norman's conviction and arrest for sexual delinquency, an investigator stated that the Delta Project was no longer operating in Chicago. It had continued operations until a 79 raid on Norman's apartment. Paskey was fired from his job as a children's supervisor at the fire department swimming pool after he was publicly linked to Norman's child prostitution ring. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Creep. What a fucking creep. Who could have possibly guessed that a cross-dressing gay man might not be trustworthy around children? Yeah. Interesting. John Norman rented a room from Jack Ruby in Dallas. Amazing. Oh, God. Alrighty. Well, let's continue to Ted Bundy. Theodore Robert Bundy was yet another serial killer whose parentage remains obscured. Yeah, he entered this world. Great. He was born in 1946 at Elizabeth Lund Home for Unwed Mothers. He was promptly abandoned there for 3 months by his mother, Eleanor Cowell. He was raised to believe that his mother's father, Sam Cowell, was his father as well, which he may in fact have been. Chronicler Ann Rule has written that the identity of Ted's real father was unknown outside of the family, and that he was a shadowy man whose real identity grows more blurred with each year that passes. Interesting. Throughout his life, Bundy described his church deacon grandfather in glowing terms, while other family members have characterized him as a horrendously violent and abusive man who terrorized his family and was sadistic to animals. Detecting a pattern, of course, Sam Cowell's own brothers reportedly stated on numerous occasions that somebody should kill him to spare the others further misery. On October 1950, Ted's mother began calling herself Louise and legally changed her son's name from Theodore Robert Cowell to Theodore Robert Nelson for no discernible reason. The next year, she married Johnny Culpepper Bundy and changed Ted's name once again. Johnny, a former Navy man and member of a large clan of Tacoma Bundys, Bundy of the Tacoma Bundys, was employed at, of all places, a military hospital at a joint Army-Air Force complex. Ted attended Woodrow Wilson High School in Tacoma, Washington, at least according to his former classmates. That can't be verified, however, since all records of Bundy's enrollment there have strangely disappeared. After graduation, he worked for a municipal electric utility. In the spring of 1967, Ted met a woman identified by the pseudonym Stephanie Brooks. She was the daughter of a wealthy California family that was just one of many women who would be drawn into Ted's orbit. Handsome fellow. In the summer of 1968, Bundy received a scholarship to attend Dr. Lund Stanford University, just as that tiny geographic region of the country was about to become the serial killer capital of the world. Ted purportedly attended Stanford for sessions in intensive Chinese studies, although nothing else in his biography hints at any interest in in Chinese studies. Excuse me, I got to take a drink. That same year, Ted traveled to Florida to attend the Republican National Convention as a supporter of presidential candidate Nelson Rockefeller. Council on Foreign Relations. At about that same time, he worked as a driver and bodyguard for Art Fletcher, a candidate for lieutenant governor of the state of Washington. In 1969, Bundy traveled to Aspen, Colorado for an extended stay after telling friends that he had been hired as a ski instructor, which turned out to be a lie. The real reason for Ted's stay in Aspen remains unknown. He also paid a visit to Arkansas that year, reportedly to visit relatives. In September 1969, another woman entered Ted Bundy's orbit. Variously identified as Liz Kendall or Meg Anders, she was the daughter of a prominent doctor in the Mormon stronghold of Ogden, Utah. Despite her social standing, her estranged husband was a convicted felon. Meg and Liz apparently did not have the best taste in men. In 1970, that was a Wen Dog line, just getting a little snarky. In 1971, Ted began working at the Seattle Crisis Clinic as a paid work-study student. He remained there through May 1972. His work partner at the clinic was none other than Ann Rule, a policewoman come true crime reporter whose brother had been recently killed, allegedly by his own hand, at where else? Stanford University. Ted left the crisis center to intern at Harborview County Hospital as a psychiatric counselor. His salary there was funded by a federal grant. He also worked that year as a key organizer of Washington Governor Dan Evans' re-election campaign. All these people are like Democratic Party operatives. Every single one of them is absolutely bizarre. Let's see. I think that there's also a photo of Ted Bundy with Rosalind Carter. So there may be multiple photos of serial killers with Mrs. Carter. Let's see. His job was specifically to spy and gather intelligence on the governor's opponent. Governor Evans later personally wrote Ted a glowing letter of recommendation to a Utah law school. As noted earlier in this chapter, Ted next worked for a variety of city, state, and county law enforcement entities. In April 1973, he became a special assistant to Washington Republican Party Chairman Ross Davies. Interesting. There we go. There's a different one, whom Ted frequently dined with and whose children, amazingly enough, he occasionally babysat. Wow. In July of that same year, Bundy again flew to San Francisco area just as the dust was settling from the flurry of ritual murders that had terrorized that city. Just after his return to Washington, women began disappearing from the Seattle-Tacoma area. Before that time, the Seattle area had experienced very few murders. It was about to change dramatically. The body of the first victim attributed to Bundy was found on December 6, 1973. Catherine Mary Devine had last been seen 2 weeks earlier getting into a pickup truck after running away from home. The man from whom she was willingly accepted the ride was not Ted Bundy. Her body was found to be missing its heart, lungs, and liver, purportedly attributable to scavenging animals. If so, those scavengers were very selective. Let's see. Randall Shirker, doesn't Gacy have a bunch of photos with all kinds of prominent politicians? I know a few in the Chicago scene can be found in addition to the Carters. Yeah, I'm sure. Like Chicago's always been a machine politics city. Let's see. let's see, son of Hastur, which of these guys pulled a stunt where he picked up a payphone and called the governor or something, impressed his friends with his connections? I am not certain. I mean, if it's Bundy, we're gonna hear it in a minute. Let's see. Next to disappear was Linda Healy in the early morning hours of February 1st, 1974. According to the official version of events, Linda was abducted from the home that she shared with others. Bundy allegedly entered the house, undetected by any of the home's other occupants, crept noiselessly downstairs, overpowered and killed Linda without waking a roommate sleeping just on the other side of a thin plywood partition, and without leaving behind any signs of a struggle, wrapped Linda's body, carried it back upstairs undetected, and then returned, still unnoticed, to make Linda's bed, hang up her nightgown, and grab a change of clothes for her. Nothing unusual about any of that. Later that same day, Linda's roommates received 3 phone calls from someone who made only breathing noises before hanging up. One of those very same roommates later roomed with one of Ted Bundy's cousins, a cousin with whom Ted had been very close since the age of 4. The brother of that same cousin, with whom Bundy was also quite close, was a teacher of what were described as disturbed youngsters. Linda herself did volunteer work at the Camelot House, described as an experimental school for retarded youth. The only remains of Healy ever found was her skull, based on which investigators speculated that she had been bludgeoned to death. According to Healy's mother, the positive identification of that her skull was based on a single tooth, raising the question of whether Linda was actually ever found at all. And whose skull was it? There was certainly nothing ever found of college student Donna Gail Manson, the next girl to disappear. She was last seen on March 12th, but it took nearly a week before anyone bothered to report her missing. Whereas Healy, who bore no physical resemblance to Manson, was abducted from her home, Donna reportedly had been out walking when she disappeared. Donna Manson is said by Bundy chronicler Stephen Mishaud to have dabbled in occultism, and Roll described her as having an obsession with death, magic, and alchemy. Found in her room was literature from Thought Power Incorporated, described by Rule as an organization offering seminars on positive thinking and mind discipline. Actually, wait a minute. Did Thought Power Inc. publish Cyclomancy? Hold on. Let's see. No, sadly. Ripperoo. Well, I'll have to look them up later. All right, let's see. Thought Power Inc. Described by Rule, seminars on positive thinking. The chief of the college police force, Alfred Pickles, reportedly ordered a perfunctory search of the campus following Donna's disappearance, and then inexplicably delegated oversight of the case to, bizarrely enough, his secretary. Wow. Okay. One of Ted's friends had been Manson's occasional racquetball partner. Another friend of Ted's was a jogging partner of Susan Rancourt, last seen on April 17th. Only her skull was ever found, along with several others, on nearby Taylor Mountain. Just a fucking skull thrown. Along with the proliferation of missing girls, the Pacific Northwest was grappling with another emerging problem in the spring of 1974, an abundance of what are referred to as cattle mutilations. While conspiracy theories attempting to explain this phenomenon abound, such theories frequently involving UFOs and alien experimentations, such as many police investigators and independent researchers have linked these occurrences to local satanic cult activity. You'd think if you were sacrificing a cow, you just take a couple steaks, right? Like you take a haunch, you wouldn't just leave it there. You wouldn't just exsanguinate it in the field. I don't know. Next to disappear from the Seattle area were Roberta Kathleen Parks and Brenda Ball. Both were later identified only by skulls that were found on Taylor Mountain once again. Ball was not reported missing for 2.5 weeks following her purported abduction. She was, curiously enough, an acquaintance of Bundy chronicler Ann Rule's daughter. Jorgen Hawkins reportedly disappeared from a well-lit, heavily traveled alleyway running along her campus's Greek Row on June 11, 1974. Many of her fellow students were up late that warm night, and virtually every window along the row facing the alley was open. Georgianne is how I should have pronounced that the first time, was seen by fellow students approaching her sorority house, right up until she was within a few seconds of the entrance. Nevertheless, she then disappeared without anyone seeing or hearing a thing. No clues were left behind, and no body was ever found. Police investigators, including a man named Herb Swindler, come the fuck on, who took over as head of the homicide division on the very day that Georgianne's disappearance was reported, and who had been friends with Ann Rule for 20 years, were at a loss to explain the disappearance. A high school friend of Ted Bundy's was a friend of the missing girl's family. I kind of think that maybe Ann Rule is creating the news to report on it. Awful lot of connections. On July 3rd, 1974, a law enforcement summit was held in Olympia, Washington. It was attended by 100 representatives from Washington and Oregon. A prime topic of conversation at the summit was the wave of missing girls, which was rather odd since only one of the girls' remains had yet been discovered, confirming that she had met with foul play. And there was no indication whatsoever that the disappearances, which occurred over a wide geographic area, were connected in any way. In attendance at the summit were the Army's Criminal Investigation Division and Bundy friend and chronicler Ann Rule. Each of these 7 girls that had disappeared thus far, Devine, Healy, Mason, Rancourt, Parks, Ball, and Hawkins, had vanished without a single clue having been left behind. There were no witnesses and no forensics evidence to tie anyone to any of the crime scenes. In some of the cases, it could not even be determined when or where the crime had occurred. All of that was about to change. On July 14th, just days after the crime conference concluded, Janice Ott and Denise Naslund both reportedly disappeared from a very crowded Lake Sammamish Park in broad daylight, and in front of literally thousands of potential witnesses, including a sizable chunk of the Seattle police force who were holding their annual picnic there that day. Wow. How embarrassing. How embarrassing for them. Or how incriminating, depending on your perspective. Ott, a probation officer whose father had sat on the Washington State Board of Prison Terms and Paroles, was the first of the 2 to disappear that day, apparently sometime around noon. No one saw her leave or get into a car with anyone. It was never explained what happened to her bike, which disappeared along with her and which would not have fit in Bundy's Volkswagen. Naslund, a known drug user who is said to usually have a supply of downers on hand, but who nevertheless babysat for a good friend of Ann Rule, disappeared around 4:30 p.m. One witness saw a girl matching her description ride off from the park with a biker gang. She reportedly yelled, "No, I can't. Let me off." Many years later, Naslund's mother wrote a brief note that was displayed at her daughter's memorial service, which read, "God forgive them for what they have done. I love you." It has never been explained why she used that peculiar wording. Yeah, why don't you go ask this grieving mother what they mean? A total of 8 witnesses came forward claiming to have seen the elusive predator in the park that day. One of them had seen Janice Ott in the company of a man with sandy blonde hair around the time of her disappearance. Sandy, you say? Interesting. The descriptions offered by the other witnesses varied. Only 2 of them were ever able to identify Bundy as the man they had seen, and then only after his image had been widely aired by the media, tainting the IDs. One thing that several of them agreed on was that the man had introduced himself as Ted. Why the stealthy killer would choose to show his face before thousands of potential witnesses and why he would do so using his real name are questions that have never been answered. Why Ted Bundy does not appear in any of the hundreds of photographs that were shot at the park that day is another question that has never been answered. Following the Lake Sam disappearances, the task force tracking the Seattle killer was dubbed the Ted Squad. One of the very first Teds reported to the newly christened task force was none other than Theodore Robert Bundy. His name was turned in by his friend, Ann Rule, fresh from her attendance at the law enforcement summit. Ted would later also be reported by his fiancée, one of his college professors, and a former co-worker at one of the government agencies where he had worked. Dear Lord. It was later determined that both girls had been strangled or bludgeoned to death, although that was a largely speculative conclusion. Only the girls' skulls and a few assorted bones were ever found on September 7th. Interesting. These remains were examined by, curiously enough, Dr. Darius Swindler. Though Rule's book reportedly claims that Darius was no relation to Herb Swindler, Michaud noted that he was in fact a distant relative of Herb Swindler. Okay, I mean, how distant are we talking? How distant is distant? One key piece of evidence, this is a distantly related, and not related or somewhat similar, right? If you're like fourth cousins or something, like your great-great-grandparents, whatever. One key piece of evidence to emerge from the Lake Sam disappearances was a possible name for the suspect. He had identified himself to several witnesses as Ted. Why the stealthy predator who had successfully abducted numerous women without leaving behind a single witness or forensics clue would suddenly operate in broad daylight using his real name was never explained. Could have gotten lazy. Real lazy, like amazingly lazy. The task force became thereafter known as the Ted Squad. Among the very first Teds to be reported to the squad was Theodore Robert Bundy by his purported friend Ann Rule. Over the course of the investigation, this is getting a little circular, isn't it? Over the course of the investigation, 4 others would report Bundy as well. His fiancée, the pseudonymous Liz Kendall, a college professor and a colleague at the Department of Emergency Services. Yeah, we repeated this, basically. The fact that only the skulls of the girls were ever found further fueled the belief that the killings were cult-related. Rule's book refers derisively to totally unsubstantiated rumors that the missing and murdered girls had been sacrificed and their headless bodies dumped, weighted to the almost bottomless waters of Lake Washington. Chronicler Michaud, however, offered a different take. Occultism or Satan worship are creeds that local police say have long found a small but ardent following of the practitioners around Seattle. He added that many people were convinced that a virulent offshoot of the Charles Manson family had moved to the Seattle area and had begun a new reign of terror led by Ted. Some on the Seattle police force were convinced that there was a cult involvement in the murders. A hefty file on occult activities in the area had been assembled, cryptically referred to as File 1004. The occult theories, though, were ridiculed by county police and prosecutors. The skulls that were recovered from Taylor Mountain were examined, curiously enough, by a local forensics expert named Darius Swindler, who Ann Rule claimed was no relation. Oh my God, they're like actually, these are phrased slightly differently, but yeah, we're just repeating this. Like there are 2 copies of the chapter that were sort of like not edited out. After the Lake Sam disappearances provided the task force with a name, no further disappearances in the area were linked to Ted Bundy. That is not to say that no more girls vanished from the area, but rather that Bundy was no longer living there. He had moved to Utah to attend law school at the University of Utah, where he worked, surprisingly enough, as a campus security guard. The first Utah victim was credited to Ted was Nancy Wilcox, last seen on October 2nd, 1974. She was never seen again, alive or dead. Melissa Smith was the next to vanish on October 18th. Her intact, nude body was found strangled and bludgeoned. The body had been almost entirely drained of blood and revealed a rather curious fact. Melissa had not been killed immediately, but been kept alive for up to a week after her disappearance. Strangely, though, her makeup was undisturbed. None of her nails were broken, and there were no signs of ligatures. If she was held against her will prior to the murder, there was absolutely no indication of that fact. If it was Ted Bundy who held her for that duration of time, then he most certainly had accomplices. Just the day after the girl's disappearance, Bundy left on a hunting trip with his fiance's father. The slain girl was, perhaps significantly and perhaps not, the daughter of the police chief of Midvale, Utah. It's not great for you. Melissa's disappearance was followed by that of Laura Aim. We'll say AIM, who vanished on Halloween night, 1974. AIM was also reportedly held up for a week before her murder, and yet the hair on her strangled and bludgeoned corpse had been freshly shampooed just before or after her death. Forensics tests revealed that she had been drunk at the time of her death. The local sheriff, Mac Hawley, was sold on another suspect of Laura's killer, a man who was later convicted of the brutal sex slaying of his girlfriend. Hawley once exasperatedly told Ted Squad member, "Bundy had nothing to do with our case, so forget him. The man didn't do our case. I wish you'd get that through your head." There were indications that Laura had some awareness that her life was in danger. Her mother reported that the girl had said to her a few weeks before her death, out of the blue, "Mother, at my funeral, I don't want to be buried in a dress." Her request was honored. The night of November 8th, 1974, was reportedly a very busy one for Ted Bundy. He first allegedly attempted to abduct a girl by the name of Carol DeBranche from a shopping mall in Murray, Utah. Failing in that endeavor, he next stuck in Bountiful, abducting Deborah Kent from outside the building where a school play was in progress. Ham says, "Wow, pod suddenly got pleasant for some reason." Now we miss our dear departed Sandbatch, and I'm sure he will be back. I did send some emergency flags up to other erstwhile co-hosts, but none have answered the call. So we'll see. We got 45 minutes or so left. We'll probably reach the reading a little early. Maybe we'll go back and read a bit about Norman. Yes, but prayers for our dear Sandbatch. Prayers for our dear Sandbatch. Let's see. Night of November 8th, 1974 was reportedly a very busy one for Ted Bundy. He first allegedly attempted to abduct a girl by the name of Carol DeBranche from a shopping mall in Murray, Utah. Failing in that endeavor, he next let's see here. Sorry, but I had a JavaScript pop up. It wanted to update, and it's like, no, fuck you. Let's see. Murray, Utah. Failing in that endeavor, he next struck in Bountiful, abducting Deborah Kent from outside the building where a school play was in progress. Kent's body was never found. The problem with this official version of events is that it would have been physically impossible for Ted Bundy or anyone else to have committed both of these crimes. First of all, the descriptions given by witnesses at the two crime scenes differed considerably. DeBranche described her attempted abductor as having slicked back hair and the strong scent of alcohol on his breath. Reappearing at the school, the suspect was described as having long, brown, wavy hair, was said to be handsome and well-dressed, with no hint of alcohol on his breath. It is possible, of course, that Ted could have changed clothes, washed and restyled his hair, and rid himself of the alcohol smell sometime between the commission of the two crimes. He would have had to do so, however, while driving a Volkswagen at over 100 miles per hour over rain-soaked streets, since the two crime scenes were nearly 26 miles apart and only 15 minutes elapsed between his departure from the DeBranche abduction site and his first sighting at the school. These times were recorded in police logs, so it was well known to the members of the Ted Squad that it would not have been possible for Bundy to essentially be in two places at once. Nevertheless, they presented as though both crimes were the work of an elusive Ted, even after a drama teacher at the second crime scene positively identified a drug dealer who was the initial suspect in the Kent case. I personally, right? Personally, I think Ted Bundy did those two and only those two because he just did it for the love of the game. He was a great driver, a master of disguise. He did it. He did it, fellas. You have to believe me. He did the impossible drive. On December 12th, 1974, another law enforcement summit was held, the Intermountain Crime Conference in Nevada. Exactly 1 month later, Ted allegedly struck again, this time moving his operations to the state of Colorado, where on January 12th, Karen Campbell disappeared from a well-lit, heavily traveled corridor in the Wildwood Inn. She had been seen just steps away from her room, where she reportedly was headed to pick up a magazine. No one at the inn saw or heard a thing. and there was no sign that there had been any struggle. Karen had reportedly argued with her fiancé on the day of her disappearance. Her badly bludgeoned body was later recovered. The next two alleged victims, Julie Cunningham and Denise Oliverson, who disappeared in March and April 1975, were never found. After that, the disappearances strangely stopped, although it was another 7 months before Ted Bundy was arrested. Excuse me. In the interim, Ted received a Mormon baptismal. Okay. The circumstances of Ted's arrest were, to say the least, rather bizarre. He was stopped by Sergeant Bob Hayward of the Utah Highway Patrol, who just happened to be the brother of Captain Pete Hayward, the chief homicide detective for the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office. The only crime Ted appears to have been committed on the night of his arrest by Bob Hayward's own account was driving down a street that happened to take him by the officer's house. Nevertheless, Hayward felt compelled to call in backup for the stop and was soon joined by two additional UHP troopers and a Salt Lake County detective. Why this manpower was required to stop a motorist who had not even committed a traffic violation remains a mystery. A thorough search of Bundy's car was conducted, which was illegal without the consent of the owner, since the officers, by their own admission, didn't have probable cause to suspect Ted of committing any crime. The officers claimed that the search was consensual, but Bundy maintained otherwise, and Ted would have been a fool to consent to the search, which no one connected to the case has ever accused him of being. Discovered in the trunk of Ted's vehicle were several provocative, though not illegal items, including a pry bar, a ski mask, a stocking mask, an ice pick, and a pair of handcuffs. The last item was said to connect Ted to the attempted abduction of Carol DeRanche, which involved the use of handcuffs. The cuffs that were found in Ted's car, however, were from a different manufacturer than the pair recovered from DeRanche's wrist. Also, they couldn't be the same ones because one set was still on her wrist. At the very time that Ted was being taken into custody, yet another law enforcement summit was underway. Convened in Aspen, Colorado, the meeting was attended by detectives and prosecutors from California, Washington, Oregon, Utah, and Colorado. This conference was held behind closed doors, and all attendees reportedly took a fraternal vow of secrecy. On November 20th, a week after the summit began, Ted was freed after posting a bond. Following his release, he reportedly thoroughly cleaned his VW, going so far as to take a garden hose to the inside of the vehicle. He also made some necessary repairs and then sold the car to a former classmate of victim Melissa Smith. Investigators later claimed that hair from 3 different victims managed to survive Ted's cleanup efforts. Bundy also moved out of his rooming home, which was under police surveillance. Oddly enough, the room he had vacated was never searched for evidence. Utah authorities had no real evidence linking Ted to any of his alleged crimes in that state, but they nevertheless proceeded to charge him with the attempted abduction of Carol DeRanche. The victim was unable to identify Bundy from an initial photo lineup, stating, "I don't see anyone in there that resembles him." Investigator Jerry Thompson, after presenting the photos to DeRanche, wrote in his notes, "She really just doesn't know." She had no problem, however, later picking Bundy out of a lineup. Ted was presented in a 7-man lineup alongside of 6 police detectives who were all a little older and a little heavier than Ted. Police detectives had, for unexplained reasons, rather hastily replaced the inmates who had originally been slated for the lineup. Not only did DeRanche pick Ted out of the lineup, but so too did 2 witnesses from the school where Debbie Kent had disappeared. Since it was, as previously noted, not possible for Ted to have been at both crime scenes, this lineup clearly had serious problems. It was alleged by some that Captain Hayward, the brother of UHP officer who arrested Ted, heavily influenced DeRanche's identification. Interesting. Let's see. With Ted set to go to trial in the DeRanche case, a trial that would hinge almost entirely on the victim's rather shaky eyewitness testimony, Bundy's lawyer concocted a most remarkable strategy. At the last minute, he suggested waiving a jury trial and letting the presiding judge, Stuart Hansen Jr., decide the fate of the defendant. What Bundy's advocate, John O'Connell, didn't tell Ted was that All the principal officers of the court, O'Connell, Judge Hanson, and prosecutor Dave Yoakum, had been buddies since their days together as classmates at the University of Utah. Ted Bundy was about to be railroaded, and it would not be for the last time. During the course of the trial, Judge Hanson regularly took it upon himself to question witnesses, which was roughly akin to a juror interjecting questions whenever he saw fit. The star witness for the prosecution, Carol DeRanche, delivered testimony that was riddled with discrepancies and inconsistencies. She was unable to decide if her would-be abductor had had a mustache or not. She told the court that his car had been white or tan, although she had initially told police that it was blue. She acknowledged on the stand that she had positively identified Bundy's car, even though by the time she did so, the car had been altered and no longer looked as it would have on the night of the incident. Many veteran court watchers found her to be somewhat less than credible, as would have it stands to reason many jurors. But there were no jurors, and Judge Hanson saw no problem with DeRanche's testimony. He pronounced Bundy guilty as charged on March 1st, 1976. Sentencing was initially set for March 22nd, but then was delayed so that Ted could be psychologically evaluated by Dr. Al Carlisle. While Bundy awaited his sentencing, his visitation privileges were severely restricted. Interestingly enough, though, Anne Rule had no problem at all being granted a special visit with Ted. Even though she was not a relative, she was not on the list of approved visitors, and she showed up on a day that was not a regular visiting day. Any one of those factors alone should have disqualified her from visiting Bundy, but nevertheless, she was not only allowed to visit with the prisoner who was being held nearly incommunicado, but she was allowed to do so without even being searched before being allowed in. On June 30th, 1976, Judge Hanson sentenced Bundy to a 1 to 15-year prison term, leaving open the possibility that he could be paroled in as little as 18 months. Ted's legal troubles were just beginning, however. On October 22nd, a warrant was issued for his arrest by the state of Colorado for the murder of Karen Campbell. The state's case against Bundy was virtually non-existent, consisting of a hair purportedly found in his car, gas purchase receipts that placed him in the state of Colorado at the time of Campbell's disappearance, along with millions of other people, a Colorado ski country guidebook that was found in Ted's possession, and on which someone, Bundy maintained it wasn't him, had improbably marked an X next to the Wildwood Inn, an alleged eyewitness and a prison informant. Also in October, Utah's notorious Gary Gilmore, immortalized in the disinformational Norman Mailer book and made-for-TV movie, was convicted and sentenced to death. Gilmore immediately and improbably began campaigning to become the first man executed in the United States since 1962. Well, it's good to have a goal. He succeeded, earning himself the appearance before the Utah Firing Squad on January 19th, 1977, and opened the doors to the resumption of state executions. So, footnote here, more than a quarter century later, Timothy McVeigh waged a very similar and equally improbable campaign to open the doors to the resumption of federal executions. He succeeded as well. His trial, conviction, and execution left many questions about the bombing of OKC unanswered. We of course we covered that in season 1 of Library of Mass Destruction. Just over a week later, Bundy was taken to Aspen to stand before Judge George Lohr and answered the charges filed against him in the Campbell case. It would not be the last time that a high-profile execution immediately preceded an important court appearance by Ted Bundy. Around the time that Bundy was awaiting trial in Colorado, a new woman entered his orbit, Carol Ann Boone, who had previously worked at a Vietnamese resettlement camp. We're returning to the Vietnamese. She would later marry Ted and bear him a child. The judge and prosecutor assigned to the Campbell case both reeked of corruption. Lohr had just presided over the Claudine Longet trial, which he had wrapped up by sentencing Longet to an absurdly lax 30-day jail term for shooting and killing famed skier Spider Sabich. This is a Pynchon novel. What is going on here? Who names the... Anyway. District Attorney Frank Tucker had seriously compromised the prosecution by losing Longet's diary, reportedly crucial to the state's case, after opting to take it home. Tucker would later be convicted not long after handling the Bundy case of 2 counts of embezzlement, 1 count of felony theft, and 2 misdemeanor counts. He was given a 90-day delayed sentence, a $1,000 fine, and was disbarred, prompting him to change careers and enroll in a mortician school in, where else? San Francisco. Bundy, perhaps catching a whiff of the stench wafting over Aspen, resolved that he would defend himself. As the preliminary trial began in early April, the state's case began almost immediately to self-destruct. On April 4th, the alleged eyewitness took the stand and confidently identified the man she had seen, a Pitkin County undersheriff. Then, the purported prison informant was quietly dropped, leaving the state without either of its witnesses. What was left were some gas receipts that proved only that Ted was in the state of Colorado, a tourist brochure that proved only that Ted may have thought about taking a ski trip to Colorado, and a single hair that an FBI analyst claimed was microscopically indistinguishable from Karen Campbell's hair, and that police claimed was recovered from Ted's car. The chances of gaining a conviction on that evidence in anything approaching a fair trial lay somewhere between slim and none. As it happened, there never was a trial. In a rather bizarre turn of events, Bundy opted not to stick around long enough to face trial. During a break in the preliminary proceedings, he purportedly escaped after being conveniently left unguarded by jumping out an open window and strolling down the street. Ted then quickly and improbably found his way to an empty cabin that happened to be stocked with food, clothing, a rifle, a flashlight, batteries, blankets, first aid supplies. He allegedly entered the cabin by prying loose the wire mesh that had been applied to the windows for security, though a caretaker later said that it would have taken superhuman strength to do so with bare hands, as Ted claimed to have done. Bundy did not remain free for long. He became lost and disoriented, causing him to fail in his quest to get away from the Aspen area and virtually guaranteeing his recapture. Once back in custody, Ted was assigned a new counsel, jet-setting attorney Stephen Buzzy Ware. These names. Ware was a flamboyant, larger-than-life character who regularly piloted himself around the country to handle major racketeering and narcotics cases. A few weeks after being assigned by the Bundy case, Ware was in a coma. He reportedly crashed into a rock wall in another one of those freak motorcycle accidents. His wife was killed in the crash. Forced again to represent himself, Bundy filed for a much-needed change of venue in order to get the case out of Aspen. Motion was granted, but that was hardly a victory for Ted. The new venue was to be Colorado Springs. Statistically speaking, there was no worse place in the state of Colorado for an accused murderer to stand trial. With his trial set to begin on January 9th, 1978, Ted again managed to escape from his captors. This time he allegedly climbed through a 1 foot square hole in the ceiling of his cell, which he had cut with a hacksaw, raising questions of where he obtained the saw and how he was able to noisily hack through the steel plate without anyone noticing. Once the crawl space above his cell, he reportedly scurried over to the space above a deputy's empty apartment, lowered himself down into a closet, and then casually strolled out the door to freedom. A prison snitch is said to have repeatedly reported hearing Ted moving about the crawl space at night, but nothing was ever done. It seems very odd, however, that a jail would ever be constructed in such a way as to create a crawl space. I mean, I don't know. There's ductwork and stuff. It does not seem probable, though. Fair. Once free, Bundy this time quickly located an MG Midget that happened to be outfitted with a set of studded radial tires, a necessity for the snow-covered roads he would be facing. What this guy, he used to drive a VW Bug, and now he's like in an MG Midget with fucking snow tires on it. That's wild. He's just a small car kind of guy. It's odd for such a handsome man. Let's see. This time, Ted wasted no time getting out of town. By the time his disappearance was discovered at noon the next day, he reportedly was already in Chicago. His commandeered vehicle did not get him far. It apparently broke down on the way to Vail. Luckily, though, he was picked up by a helpful GI who gave him a ride. He then traveled by bus from Vail to Denver and then by plane from Denver to Chicago. You just get on a plane at this time. Once there, he stole a car and drove to Atlanta. From From there, he made his way to Tallahassee, acquiring a new identity along the way, Chris Hagen. That's how the official story reads anyway. On January 15th, 1978, a slaughter took place at the Chi Omega sorority house on the campus of the University of Florida at Tallahassee. This crime did not bear even the slightest resemblance to any of the previous crimes attributed to Ted Bundy, but rather was reminiscent of the attack 12 years earlier that had been attributed to Richard Speck. 4 girls were brutally bludgeoned in the early morning hours. 2 of them died from their injuries. A 5th girl was subsequently attacked at another location not far away. The first attack at the Chi O house reportedly occurred just after 3 a.m. and was over in just 15 minutes. In that brief period of time, a single assailant was allegedly able to get room to room, locating and viciously beating 4 women, in addition to raping and sodomizing 2 of them. 15 minutes? 15 minutes for twice? I don't know, man. I don't know about that. One of the maybe if you just had to like bash them around a little bit, you just like quickly, you quickly do it. That's possible, but I don't know about the raping and the sodomizing in 15 minutes. You got to just feel like it's going to take some time. One of the sorority sisters, Nita Neary, caught a brief glimpse of an intruder in the house as the man was leaving through the front door. She saw him only in profile and described him as wearing a watch cap pulled down low over his face. His most noticeable feature, she said, was a large nose. Neary had just arrived home at 3 a.m. from a campus kegger party and was quite likely intoxicated to some degree, although the state claimed that this star witness had been quite sober on the night of the attack. Under hypnosis, she later said that the intruder closely resembled the sorority's houseboy, who looked nothing like Ted. Another sorority sister, Carol Johnston, was only asleep that night for a total of 5 minutes from 3:14 to 3:19 a.m. She was awakened by Neary and others. Nevertheless, she did not see or hear anything out of the ordinary that night. The first officers were on the scene by 3:23 a.m., just minutes after the dazed and bloodied victims staggered out of their rooms. These officers were quickly joined by a virtual army of city police, campus police, and county sheriff's deputies. The streets surrounding the house were soon brimming with squad cars, detectives' vehicles, ambulances, and a hearse. Nearly 40 distraught sorority sisters were milling about the house, many of them with blood dripping from their hands from their efforts to assist the victims. Joining the circus were an unspecified number of curiosity seekers who were allowed to roam freely about the house. Nevertheless, needless to say, the crime scene was hopelessly compromised before any serious investigation could even begin. Key evidence was destroyed at the scene, and the evidence that was preserved tended to point away from Ted Bundy as the likely perpetrator. For example, semen found in the bed of Cheryl Thomas, the 5th victim, proved to be from a non-secretor, effectively ruling out Bundy as the donor. Good job, Bundy. You got good junk. You got good junk you're shooting. Just weak loads. Jack Norman writes of this. Effectively ruling out Bundy. Chewing gum. I love that they call him a donor. This donor is very interesting choice of words. Chewing gum that was discovered in the hair of one victim and that could have yielded both saliva and bite mark evidence was destroyed. Saliva that would have likely been present around the alleged bite wound in the buttocks of another victim was swabbed away at the scene. Biting the butt. The wound was allegedly photographed at the scene, but the photos that were later produced were not taken with the medical examiner's camera. That camera purportedly malfunctioned, so the photos were taken instead with a standard 35 millimeter film, allegedly supplied by a crime scene specialist. The section of the skin that contained the incriminating marks was excised and placed in saline solution. Unfortunately, it was destroyed in the process. You cut her skin out? What the fuck? Oh, maybe this is a dead one. A sheriff's deputy on the scene prematurely ordered one victim's body, Margaret Bowman's, taken to the morgue before the crime scene technicians had even ascertained whether any evidence was present on the corpse. And so it went to the Chi Omega house that fateful night. One rather curious fact about the crime scene that doesn't appear to have been commented on by any of Bundy's numerous chroniclers was observed by Ray Cruz, one of the first officers on the scene. Cruz later testified in court and later repeated in interviews that the body of victim Lisa Levy was cold to the touch upon its discovery. According to the official version of events, however, she had been dead for just minutes before her discovery, not long enough for her body to have noticeably cooled. One other rather curious fact that proves once again bizarre coincidences appear frequently in these stories of America's serial killers was that Darius Swindler, the forensics expert from Seattle, just happened to be in Tallahassee on the night of the killings. Another largely forgotten fact indicated that there was at least a possibility that the victims had not been randomly targeted. A set of keys to Thomas's house that likely were used by her killer were discovered in her backyard. Not long after the bloody rampage in Tallahassee, 12-year-old Kimberly Leach disappeared from Lake City Junior High in broad daylight amid heavy rush hour traffic. Her body was found 2 months later, completely drained of blood. The cause of death was listed as homicidal violence to the neck region. The day after her disappearance, coincidentally or otherwise, Ted Bundy's name was added to the FBI's Ted Most Wanted list. Ted Most Wanted list. Let's see. There was no indication at that time that Ted had anything to do with the Florida crimes. It certainly didn't match his supposed MO. There was no reason to suspect that Bundy was anywhere near the state of Florida. Ted was arrested shortly thereafter, bearing yet another new name, Kenneth Misner. His last night of freedom was spent, oddly enough, in a wooded area of the Elgin Air Force Base, a restricted military facility. He had in his car at the time an array of credit and identification cards, as well as several photos of girls and young women. After allegedly sending word that he wanted to talk without counsel, Ted was interrogated in Pensacola without an attorney present, and the conversation was taped. His public defenders later loudly complained that they had been refused entry to the interrogation room. The resultant tapes were filled with gaps, allegedly due to the tape recorder unerringly malfunctioning whenever Ted purportedly made incriminating statements. None of these supposedly confessional statements were recorded, but detectives swore that Ted had in fact made them. Johnny Wells says, helpful GI, Louis Chalion West. Yes, drove him the whole way. That's right. There were some interesting bits of conversation that were recorded, including this exchange. Police interrogator: where'd you get the money that you used after your escape to travel? Ted says, well, man, there's other people. Other people are in on it. The next day, Bundy was handcuffed and brought to the courtroom under heavy guard, with his attorneys still complaining that he had not yet been allowed to see their client in jail. Following his appearance, Ted was taken away with what chronicler Richard Larson described as a strange, aloof look in his eyes. Bundy walked right past Larson, who was a friend of his, without any hint of recognition. The nighttime interrogations of Bundy continued for a week, first in Pensacola, then in Tallahassee. The first week of March, Ted was brought to appear before Judge John Rudd. On April 27th, Rudd issued a warrant authorizing Bundy's captors to take dental impressions of their prisoner, by force if necessary. Curiously, prosecutors had waited for over 2 months before taking steps to obtain this allegedly key piece of evidence. In July, a grand jury was convened to hear secret testimony pertaining to the disappearance of Kimberly Leach. On the 21st, an indictment was handed down, which a judge immediately ordered sealed. The next week, another grand jury was convened to hear evidence in the Chi Omega case. In December 1978, Judge Rudd was ordered by the Florida Supreme Court to disqualify himself from hearing the case due to his having shown an obvious bias against the defendant. Rudd was replaced by Judge Edward Cowart, a former Navy man and police officer. On May 31st, 1979, Ted was scheduled to appear before Cowart to accept the terms of a plea agreement that would have handily disposed of both the case in which the indictments had been handed down. In exchange for entering 3 guilty pleas to the 3 counts of first-degree murder, Ted was to receive 3 consecutive 25-year prison sentences. This would have been a great deal for Bundy if he was in fact guilty of the crimes he was charged with, and if the state had a solid case against him to prove that fact. However, there is scant evidence to suggest that was the case. To ensure that Bundy stuck to the script and entered the guilty plea, the state of Florida executed John Spenkelink. Okay, Spenkelink. Just 6 days before Ted's scheduled court appearance. The message sent to Bundy could not have been any clearer. Take the deal, or you too will have an appointment with Florida's old Sparky. To further drive that point home, Ted was brought to appear the very same courtroom where Spenkelink had been condemned to die, with many of these same actors in attendance. For a time, Bundy was even represented by Spenkelink's attorney, Brian Hayes. Spenkelink was, curiously enough, only the second man executed in this country since 1962, the first being, of course, the aforementioned Gary Gilmore. Before his electrocution, Spenkelink was asked if he had any final statements, to which he replied, "I can't talk. The chin strap is too tight." That was the only statement he was allowed to make. Oh my fucking God. Ted was not intimidated. He refused the deal. On June 25th, 1979, the Chi Omega trial began in Miami, Florida. It was the very first trial in U.S. history to be nationally televised. By June 30th, final jury selections had already been made. Sitting on that jury, according to at least two of Bundy's chroniclers, was a man named Vernon Swindler, whom Michaud had noted had been to a murder trial before, his cousins. For those who may have just lost count, that brings to three the number of people named Swindler who played a part in the investigation and prosecution of Ted Bundy. Herb Swindler, the head of the homicide division, Darius Swindler, the forensics expert who examined the alleged victim's remains, and Vernon Swindler, the juror. Nothing unusual about that, I suppose, nor in the fact that Ted's defense team included a jury expert who was actually an Atlanta hypnotist named Emil Spillman. What the fuck? The case presented by the state was, to put it politely, problematic. A stocking mask was produced that was purportedly found at the Thomas residence, and which was said to be identical to the one found in Ted's car during the illegal Utah search, though one has to wonder how different one stocking mask could be from another. The mask from the Florida crime scene was said to have yielded 2 hairs from the head of Ted Bundy. Interestingly enough, the only eyewitness that night, Nita Neary, testified that the man she saw was not wearing any such mask. Of the 260 different fingerprints found in the Chi Omega house by detectives, not one of them matched those of Ted Bundy, even though Neary also said that the intruder she saw was not wearing any gloves. In court, Nita Neary positively identified Bundy, as she reportedly had done from a photo lineup, though she had wavered in that identification when she had first seen Ted in person. And as previously noted, she had said under hypnosis that the intruder more closely resembled the sorority's houseboy. She had also said that he had a very prominent nose, a feature that Ted was clearly lacking. Okay, clearly lacking. Let's see. Hold on real quick. We're just going to pull up another picture of Ted Bundy in terms of prominent nose. I mean, it's not like a big nose. It's a normal nose. Yeah, I mean, if you were going to name one feature, you probably wouldn't say he's got a big nose. Yeah. All right, fair. It's not like he's missing a nose, right? That would be clearly lacking, but yeah. Let's see. The notorious bite mark evidence was presented to the jury, even though the actual bite wound had been destroyed and the photos purportedly taken of the wound had been shot with a camera older than that of the medical examiner, hopelessly compromising the evidence chain. The bite wound evidence was presented by a man named Dr. Richard Soveron, who had published his supposed findings before the trial even began, thereby contaminating the jury pool. In explaining the techniques that he had used to come to his conclusion, the doctor may well have inadvertently revealed exactly where the photos of the victim's bite wound came from. I took models from the castings of Bundy's teeth, and I went to the morgue and I pressed the models into the buttocks area on different individuals and photographed them. The good doctor took the castings of Bundy's teeth and used them to bite the buttocks of corpses, and then photographed those bite wounds with a 35mm camera, But those were, of course, different 35 millimeter bite wound photos than the ones that were allegedly taken of the actual bite wound victim, though those photos were also taken with a 35 millimeter camera rather than with the ME's camera. And it couldn't actually be proven that there ever was an actual bite wound victim, since the purported physical evidence of the wound itself had been destroyed. Bob Campbell, a Fort Lauderdale police officer who followed the trial, was skeptical of both the bite mark testimony and of Neary's dubious identification of Bundy, despite the fact that he had a vested interest in seeing Bundy convicted, given that it was his sister that Ted had been on trial for killing prior to his escape in Colorado. Dr. Dwayne DeVore, the name is DeVore, his name is Vore, okay, was skeptical as well. Even if we take a leap of faith and assume that the photos of the bite wounds were legitimate, DeVore resisted that the tooth patterns visible in the photo was a very common one, and the material of the skin is flexible, elastic, and not at all good medium from which to compare bite marks. But he himself cast further doubts on the evidence when he attempted to introduce photographs demonstrating that one of his teeth had been chipped after the attack at the Chi Omega house. To prove that point, Ted requested a delay in the trial to subpoena the negatives of photographs taken of him by the media. If Bundy's bite pattern had in fact changed after his arrest, then proving that would have conclusively proven that the bite wound evidence had been fabricated using castings of Ted's teeth. The judge disallowed the motion, and no photographic evidence was ever reviewed by the court. Amazing. This was certainly not the only ruling to go against Bundy. It was clear from the time of the opening defense statements that the court was heavily biased in favor of the prosecution. The defense's statement, which ordinarily would not be expected to draw objections, ran for just 26 minutes and was interrupted with an astounding 29 objections, 23 of which were sustained. When all was said and done, the jury deliberated for just 6 hours before finding Bundy guilty on all counts. Following the penalty phase of the trial, the jurors required just an additional hour and 40 minutes to deliver 2 death sentences. Ted was sent to Death Row's Q Wing, otherwise known as the Bug Wing, where he took up a residence in John Spenkelink's recently abandoned cell. In January 1980, he was back in court again to face murder charges, this time for the death of Kimberly Leach. There was virtually no chance of him receiving a fair trial. His name recognition in Orange County, where he was being tried, was said to be 98%. Only the comatose were unaware of the notorious Ted Bundy. The state used that fact to their full advantage, brazenly stacking the jury with those who had prior knowledge of the case. As Ted accurately noted, the state's case is predicated on knowledge outside of this courtroom. Even Ann Rule acknowledged that the prospective jurors appeared willing to say almost anything so that they might be chosen. Ted's defense counsel this time around was a man named Vic Africano, who candidly described Bundy as a split personality. Court watchers noted that Bundy seemed to have undergone a radical transformation from his previous trial, during which he had represented himself quite lucidly and animatedly. He now seemed distant, aloof, and out of touch with his surroundings. It would later be revealed that Carol Boone kept him supplied with a steady flow of drugs and alcohol throughout the latter proceedings. There were ostensibly 3 eyewitnesses to the Leach abduction, but there were serious questions about all of them. The first was a 73-year-old crossing guard who remembered the day of the abduction as having been a warm, summery day, when in fact it had been a rain-drenched morning, which the temperature had been near freezing. According to chronicler Michaud, during a deposition, the witness had told the attorney that he knew he'd picked the right man because an FBI agent winked at him when he picked the right picture in the photo lineup. His testimony was deemed inadmissible, as was that of the second eyewitness, who had been unable to identify Ted for nearly 2 years before suddenly developing an ability to do so. The third witness, C.L. Andy Anderson, had waited for weeks before belatedly reporting his version of the abduction to police. Anderson happened to work at the local fire station, which was, conveniently enough, located in the same building as the Lake City Police Department. Okay. Anderson's version of the incident was seriously lacking credibility. He claimed that Bundy, ever the careful criminal, had improbably left his van parked on the street, blocking the only westbound traffic lane during the morning rush hour while he leisurely prowled about the school looking for a suitable victim. In order to enhance his memory of that day, Anderson had reportedly been hypnotized. Another witness, a sporting goods dealer, claimed in court that he had sold Bundy a knife shortly before the crime was committed, but there was no evidence that a knife had been used in the commission of the crime, and the witness had initially identified another man in a photo lineup. Sure, you just didn't sell a knife to somebody. The most compelling element of the state's case, on the surface anyway, was the purported fiber evidence. Fibers from a van that Ted had allegedly stolen and used for a period of 10 days were reportedly recovered from Leach's purse, bra, jersey, and socks. Conversely, fibers from her denim purse and jeans were said to have been found in the van. The problem was that there was no evidence to suggest that Ted had ever stolen, used, or been anywhere near that van. None of Ted's or Leach's hair was ever found in the van, even though 100 hair samples were recovered from the vehicle, clearly demonstrating that no effort had been made to cleanse the van of evidence. Similarly, dozens of latent fingerprints were found in the van, but none of them belonged to Ted. Obviously, no effort had been made to wipe the van down, which was not consistent with Bundy's other alleged actions. For instance, it was claimed that Ted's Florida apartment had been so thoroughly cleaned before his departure that not a single fingerprint could be found anywhere. Yeah, once again, if you can't find a single fingerprint in a living space, you didn't live there. Like, another problem with the fiber evidence is the notion that a fiber from a pair of denim jeans, a mass-produced commodity, can be matched to a particular pair of jeans. There's absolutely nothing unique about any particular pair of blue jeans that would allow an analyst to ascertain that it was the garment that yielded an individual fiber to the exclusion of all other pairs of jeans. Very true. These are not, in other words, fingerprints we are talking about here. These are textile. Well, there are questions about fingerprints too. These are not, in other words, fingerprints we're talking about here. These are textiles that are produced in enormous lots. The same is largely true of carpet fiber, including those from the van, which is also a mass-produced commodity. The best that can be ascertained is that the fiber came from a particular make of automobile, not from any specific vehicle. Claims to the contrary fly in the face of any sort of logic. The best that the state could do to connect Bundy to the van was through the testimony of Detective James Parmenter of Jacksonville. Prior to the Leach abduction, his kids had purportedly had an encounter with the van and its driver. Parmenter arranged for his kids to be hypnotized, out of which allegedly came a positive ID of Bundy as the driver. Bundy was thus ever so tenuously linked to the van, though the manipulated testimony of two young children, of a police detective, and not through any physical evidence whatsoever, and the van was then tenuously linked to Kimberly Leach, though only through dubious fiber evidence. None of this really mattered, however, as Bundy's guilt was a foregone conclusion for the people of the state of Florida. It took the jury only 45 minutes to deliver yet another death sentence on February 9th, the second anniversary of Leach's disappearance, a fact that surely was not lost on the jurors. Following the verdict, Ted was sent to occupy a cell right next to that of our old friend Otis Toole. Throughout the 80s, long after Ted Bundy had moved on, women continued to vanish in and around the Seattle area, as many as 100 of them by some counts. Most of them were prostitutes, many of them underage. These killings were attributed to the so-called Green River Killer, who has never been caught, though recent reports claim that the police now have a suspect that will be prosecuted. In the summer of 1985, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, VICAP, was launched at the FBI headquarters in Quantico, Virginia. Ted Bundy was said to be the prototype for which the system was based. This system, despite the lofty goals implied by the name, has little to do with the apprehension of violent criminals and everything to do with the wholesale erosion of civil rights in this country, using the fear of a manufactured phenomenon, serial killers, to sell repressive measures to the American people. One of the biggest promoters of the system, who did everything but go door to door to assist the FBI in its efforts to justify implementation, was Ann Rule. The very same Ann Rule consented to be a witness for the prosecution during Bundy's so-called competency trials, which were an effort on Ted's part to persuade the courts to set his sentences aside and grant him new trials in the Florida cases. In her book, The Stranger Beside Me, Rule, a former Chi Omega sorority sister, justifies the selling out of her purported friend by saying there would be a very real threat that Ted could work his way back through all his legal thickets. In other words, if Bundy's verdicts had been set aside and if new trials had been ordered, there would have been a very real possibility that his previous trials would have been revealed as the judicial shams they were. The truth of the matter was, as Stephen Michaud wrote, in dozens of cases from Seattle to Florida, which the police have sought to implicate Bundy, there has not been a single bit of evidence that incontrovertibly demonstrates his involvement in anything more sinister than car theft. Michaud attributes this to Bundy being some sort of criminal mastermind, a genius who is smart enough to always cover his tracks. In truth, there was never any evidence to suggest that Bundy was a genius. There's no doubt an intelligent man, but there's nothing in his academic record or his IQ test scores to indicate that he rose to the level of a genius. On April 1987, the Associated Press reported that the incarcerated Bundy had been corresponding with attempted presidential assassin John Hinckley Jr., who was in turn corresponding with Manson disciple cum attempted presidential assassin Lynette Squeaky Fromm. Birds of a feather. On August 1987, Lamas on the occult calendar, Judge Cowart died of a massive heart attack while lying in a private hospital room that he had checked into for observation. He had no prior history of illness. Ted Bundy, calmed by tranquilizers, was put to death by the state of Florida January 24th, 1989. In his final hours, he allegedly confessed on tape to an array of murders, including some in the state of Idaho that he had never been accused of. Many of the details given in these confessions were either wrong or unverifiable, and the tape is difficult to hear, due purportedly to yet another tape recorder malfunction. One type of evidence that would have proven tremendously damaging to Bundy had it been introduced at any of his trials was Polaroid photographs of the murders. According to some officials, such photographs did exist, taken by Ted himself. As with so many other cases, though, such evidence was never produced. Why? Perhaps because those photographs would show actors other than, or in addition to, Theodore Robert Bundy. All right. That is gonna be it for this week. You have an opportunity to super duper chitty chat me if you like. But yeah. So just so you know, the Green River Killer was Gary Leon Ridgway. He was caught and arrested November 30th, 2001. He was linked to the murders through DNA evidence and other forensic breakthroughs, eventually pleading guilty to 49 counts of murder in 2003. He was a truck painter in Washington State, killed hookers, and dumped them all in the Green River. He is serving multiple life sentences, allegedly. So, that is that story. All right. So, Randall Shirker sends it $2 donuts. Says, remind Sandbatch to take care of himself. We certainly shall. Best wishes to Sandbatch in the coming week. We will see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
You're discouraged from questioning and thinking critically. You must accept the word of the leaders. They make you feel guilty if you do question or argue. Your environment is often controlled, cutting you off from friends, family, school, previously held beliefs. They want you to become dependent, provide a poor diet, poor health care, little sleep, and long, exhausting hours of work to make you physically weak and lower your ability to think clearly. Subtly, your self-confidence gets undermined, and your self-image or sense of identity is changed. The leaders control channels of communication. They cut off or put down outside sources of information. Then they bombard you with what they want you to think. They use strong peer pressure, playing on your desire to be loved and accepted. The leaders may promise rewards if you obey them and punishment if you don't, but they alternate harshness and leniency in order to confuse you. The leaders manipulate language, giving special meanings to words that only insiders understand. This is to make you feel like you're part of a special, important, or elite group, and that outsiders are inferior, dangerous, or doomed. You have to confess your shortcomings, mistakes, or misbehavior, sometimes even if these things never really happened. And meanwhile, your time and activities are tightly controlled. You don't have much privacy or energy or time to think because you're too busy doing monotonous, repetitive tasks. The leaders try to control you and even your sexuality, everything about you. They want to exploit you for their own enrichment, their own power or grandiosity. If they succeed, you will declare your loyalty to its leaders, rejecting your old values and way of life. Without realizing it, you will have been changed into a person who is being controlled by a totalist cult.